Welcome to the 21st episode of the Nerdom and Other Nonsense Anime Podcast. This is part 2 of our summer 2017 season's first impressions. So please listen to episode 20 if you want to hear our thoughts on shows that air Sunday through Wednesday. We'll be finishing out Thursday through Saturday shows, as well as voting on which 10 shows we're going to cover throughout the summer season. My name is Leo, and I've asked a surgeon to implant Destiny's newest exotic weapon, Cold Heart, in place of my own heart, so I can launch ice lasers out of the cold, empty Tsukigakure hating void where my heart used to be. And Bcom's here.
This explains so much about your hate for Tsukigakure. It's just you had this cold, icy void where a heart was supposed to be. That's why you didn't like it.
It's okay. There's a better drama this season, and I will. I can't help but make comparisons to it. It just kills me.
Is it Angel's 3-piece?
No, I'm not into pedophilia. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but we can
get
start
started
off with
then.
Thursdays.
All right. So the first show of the second half is Gamers, which is on Crunchyroll. And the source is a light novel. The studio is Pine Jam, who've really not done much. They did a show like Maho Shoujo Nante Moi Descara a little while back, but really they haven't done much before this show. And the director is Manabu Okamoto, who is a first-time director. So these are all bad signs.
Yeah, you would think.
So episode 1 is called Keita Amano and the Chapters of the Chosen. And I was shocked by how good this episode was.
I'm right there next to you, dude.
I came out of this episode thinking this is like one of the first anime in my experience to portray like the whole modern gaming landscape in a way that I could actually identify with myself, because usually these game shows that are in anime are based on either like a dating sim or a visual novel game or an MMO RPG, a Japanese MMO, which is very different from like a Western MMO in a lot of ways, typically, and typically like a crappier game just overall. And so, but no, this show is way different. It covers like a whole bunch of things. Like speed running was talked about in this show. Like Counter-Strike Go appeared. Guilty Gear, the fighting game, was in this show. And
was
like the
Persona fighting game.
Yeah, was that an episode? Yeah, I think episode 2 there was a Persona 4 fighting cabinet, which was awesome because when I was in Japan, I played Persona 4 on a fighting cabinet and got my ass destroyed by some Japanese kid. And it was really depressing.
I would have fared no better, dude.
And the main character, one of his conflicts is that he is more of a casual gamer, and the cutest girl in his school, Karen Toto, I think is her name, is trying to recruit him into her gaming club. And his problem is that he goes and hangs out with the club, and they're kind of more hardcore competitive gamers. Like there's a Counter-Strike kid there who's like super competitive, and there's
it's neat how they portrayed how good he was, because he was like using a sniper.
Yeah.
But using it like mid-range.
Which is what you do in Counter-Strike too. It's like totally like, yeah, that's exactly what I would think of when I think of like super Counter-Strike nerd. Like that's exactly what I think of. So there's also a fighting game girl there who like didn't even talk. She just like sat there with her like blouse low cut and played fighting games like Guilty Gear, and she was really cute.
That cleavage.
She is definitely my best girl so far. I like her a lot. She at one point hands the fighting stick to the main character, whose name is Keita Amano. I think it may be Keita Amano. And she's like, she doesn't even say anything. She just hands him the fighting stick, like, come play with me. It'll be okay. But basically, he's uninterested in the club, it turns out, because he just wants to play games for fun. And he feels like he played a little bit of like a Call of Duty type game with them on console, and he was just getting destroyed, and he wasn't having fun. And he was feeling like that they were too competitive for him to hang out with. So at the end of the first episode, after all this stuff, basically he like rejects the really cute girl and says, I'm not going to join your club. I'm sorry. Like, I don't want to play with you.
The show's so funny.
It's funny. I felt it was kind of unrealistic. Like, I understand his reasoning, but like, he turned her down once, like in the hallway by the game room, and then he came back to the classroom. He's like, "What did I just do? I'm such an idiot." And she comes and asks him again, and he rejects her again. And I was like, wait, okay. This
and
is
then she cries, and she runs out of the classroom, but slips and falls and stands up and cries and keeps running again.
Yeah.
And I want to say the inner dialogue that the main character keeps having, it was just cracking me up the entire show.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I thought it was super funny the way he's like thinking about this stuff. And I know for sure when I was telling you, I'm like, I got Gamers on my list. I'm going to watch this. I don't expect anything from it. Right. And then just to be like basically blown away like it was, that was pretty cool. And like all the old school video game noises just for like here and there and all this other places is great.
Yeah, this is like definitely like my biggest or second biggest surprise of the whole season. Oh, there was one gag in episode 1 that I really liked where Karen is talking about how when she plays like Mario, even like King Koopa is polite to her. Like Bowser is just like polite to her in game with his.
He's like that's clearly a glitch.
It's like that's not supposed to be like that. It was really funny. Yes. And then, episode 2 was good, too. They introduced a couple new characters. There's a guy in Keita's classroom who's named Tatsuku Uehara. And he is kind of preppy, but it turns out that he's kind of just hanging with popular people because in middle school, he used to be a huge nerd and he got made fun of.
And he reinvented himself.
Yeah, exactly. Reinvented himself completely. And he doesn't really feel comfortable with the group of people he hangs out with. Like he even says they're lame, but then he like laughs it off like he was joking at one point. Because they kind of are making fun of Keita, who had just rejected Karen, which they thought was like ridiculous. And Tatsuku has this girlfriend who has bubblegum pink hair. Her name is Aguri. And she's kind of an airhead, but very, very cute. Like there's a scene where they're eating lunch and like she sits down in his lap and is like, "I'm going to recharge on Tatsuku power." And I'm like, oh my God, this girl. She's a little ridiculous, but
she's
basically
great, though.
No, she's great. Yeah, the way the episode goes is that like they go to an arcade after school and Tatsuku is basically ignoring her and his friends, and he goes off to play a claw game, and he's really good at these claw games, which are freaking impossible. I played them in Japan. Like, they are so hard. Like, the way he gets, like, things is by, like, having the claw, like, grip, like, the little plastic tag instead of actually gripping the doll, because that doesn't actually work. So, apparently, that's the secret. I wish I had known. But I spent so much money trying to get an Idolmaster figure from one of those machines. It was impossible.
Man, what a nerd.
I was a nerd, but it was just right there. It was hanging on the edge, but that's how they get you. It's not actually hanging. It's just, it looks like it's hanging on the edge. So.
I've only tried very little with claw games, but these are probably American ones that I've had fairly good success. But I bet if I went to Japan, it would no.
They're pretty insidious in Japan. They're they're definitely money drainers.
Well, they almost have to be because they got literal Japanese
merchandise
kids that can. Other than having actually like really good merchandise in there, who are probably super good and get it almost every time.
Oh yeah, for sure. So basically he's playing this claw machine. He pictures his older self. This is where we find out he used to be a nerd. And then he sees
younger self.
His younger his younger
older self.
I said older self. He kind of looks older. He has like glasses on and he looks weird. But he sees Keita, who is looking at the claw machine, and then they kind of go around the arcade together and play a bunch of games. And Tatsuku's having like a really good time for the first time in a while, even though Keita is kind of terrible. Like, they play the Persona 4 game and Keita is just absolutely awful at it, and the show does an amazing job from Tatsuku's point of view, showing you what Keita's doing and how it's so predictable and how it's getting him killed. It really just breaks down like every move he's trying to do, why it's predictable, and how it's so easy to defeat.
They have literal gamers working on this anime. They have
for sure. Like, they definitely understood like fighting games for sure. Like, they got some really good input there. Like, I feel like the people who make this anime like go to arcades after work and play fighting games or something, because it really felt like that. It felt very authentic.
Or this was like almost literally their high school life.
Exactly. So basically what happens, they have a good time, and then Keita sees Tasuku's friends like coming around the corner. They're looking for him, and he runs away, and Tasuku gets really pissed off that Keita ran away, because like he finally had somebody that he could connect with hanging out with him. And so he runs after Keita, and then they get into this big argument about like, Keita's like, well, you have a real life. Like, I didn't want to like embarrass you in front of your real friends. And Tasuku's like, if it looks like I have a real life, it's because I'm acting really hard. I'm trying really hard to appear like I'm content and happy, but really I'm not. And like Keita like kind of confronts him and says like, you don't get to insult me, blah, 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 blah. And they kind of just end up friends after they let out their frustration. And then the rest of the episode is Tasuku walks back towards the arcade, and he sees Karen, who has been snooping around the arcade this whole time. She's apparently fallen in love with Keita now because he rejected her. It seems like
trying to seek him out. She really falls in love with him when the two have the
big argument,
go at each other on the sidewalk bridge over the road.
Yeah,
and she watches it, and he says something like he basically just like backs her up, and he's like, she's not a bad person or something like that. And that's when she like finally falls for him, like hard.
Right. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. And then, so Tasuku gets back to the arcade, and his girlfriend Aguri is still waiting for him there. And he's still in kind of like an introspective mood. So he asks her like, hey, like, why did you start going out with me? Like, what do you like about me?
Before you explain that, what's really cool is like, he's just dating her just because she confessed. He doesn't really have feelings for her until this realization happens. And then he's like, and then suddenly he's like, why do I suddenly have a boner for her?
Yeah. Basically, she tells him that like she's liked him since middle school when they met in the arcade, and he got a claw game like thing for her, like a
plushie or something.
Plushie, yeah, exactly. And he's like, wait, she used to like me even back in my dark ages when I was a complete nerd. And so it totally changes the way that he sees her, because he thought that she liked him for the new weird guy that he had become, like, the new preppy guy.
Flashback of the memory of him being really nerdy, and then getting it for this girl who was just like the plain as day. She has black hair. She just has them like on the low pigtails. You know what I'm talking about? With the band's not high up on the head. It's on the low side. She's got glasses. She's like a nerdy nobody. But then like he then reinvented himself for high school. So he was cool. And she was going to confess to him. But then she saw that and she was like, oh my God. So she's like started reading up on magazines and stuff. And that's why her appearance is so different now. And when he realized that, he's like, what? I really liked it. I thought it was cool.
Oh, yeah. No, definitely. Yeah, this is one of my favorite shows of the season so far. Very surprisingly to me. But yeah, it's really good. And as a quote-unquote gamer myself, I really like it.
Yeah, I mean, it's very true to people who, know who play video games or anything like that. And I'm not really familiar with arcade stuff, but I've seen enough anime to know what's real and what's not, I guess. Yeah, that's cool. But you only had one more standout moment left.
Where is that? I don't even know.
When Aguri's confessing to Tasuku.
Oh yeah, it's like basically there's the flashback of when she first confesses to him. Like she confesses and she has her eyes closed, and then like a huge snowdrift just falls from a nearby roof and like covers her. And it was just really funny. I was just like, that's hilarious. I don't know. There's very cute moments in this show for sure. I really like the character designs a lot. They stand out. They're kind of unique. Like you don't see many characters that look exactly like Aguri or exactly like Karen. And the guys they look pretty cool too. So yeah, I'm definitely into this. And fighting games girl, oh my God.
If only she was real.
Basically. All right, let's move on to the next show. So the next show is Dive, which is on Amazon Strike. This? I will, yeah. So it's on Amazon Strike. The source is a novel. And the studio is Zero G, who did Battery and Sugumomo most recently. And the director is Kaoru Suzuki, who has done really nothing of note that I could find. So yeah, the first episode is called Dive to Blue. Like, so first impressions for me for a sports show are very important. Like if it can get you right off the bat, it can really hook you. Like something like Haikyuu gets you like right off the bat, I feel, or the show Cross Game in a different way gets you emotionally hooked right from the first episode. Right off the bat, Dive gave me not a great impression because the episode starts off with like a little boy running after his dog, and then the dog leads him to a pool where he sees competition diving boards for the first time in his life. And he looks at them and he thinks they're like a 3-headed dragon or something. And his voice acting is also very clearly done by a girl and sounds very girly. And so, yeah, usually when girls do boy voices, they at least try not to sound like a girl. But here's the important part of all this. There's a kid on the diving board and he dives. And so the main character, the little kid, is watching him. And this is the first animated dive we see in the TV show, which is called Dive. And the dive is just terribly animated. It looks so bad. It's probably the worst looking dive in the show because after that, the dives got a little bit better. But I was just saying to myself, like, this is a show called Dive that is about diving. And this is supposed to be the moment where the kid is like influenced to become a diver. And it looks so bad. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's a bad sign.
Yeah, for sure. That's what I felt too.
I mean, we were just talking about a game called Gamers. And guess what? They got the games right.
They definitely got the gaming part very right in that show. Yeah. And that's important. So we learned that the kid who the MC Kun saw dive, his name is Yoichi. He's an older diver. And like, yeah, I mean, the diving boards and the water are all CG in this show as well, which is kind of weird. It mixes in poorly sometimes. When he dives, it's hand drawn, but it doesn't look good. So I was laughing my ass off at these like terrible animations. And then, so yeah, the main character's name is Tomo. He's in middle school now. We have a time jump because Yoichi was basically like, hey, do you want to come dive? And like he showed him how to dive as a little kid. So Tomo's weird. He basically has this relationship with his friends where he never hangs out with them because he's always going to diving practice. It's all he really cares about. But he also has a girlfriend named Miyu who wants to walk with him to diving practice. Her home is in the other direction, so it's clear that she's like very interested in him. Otherwise, like she wouldn't even bother. But as they're walking, like he does not pay any attention to this girl whatsoever. He's like off in his own world, like thinking about diving and like the pain of failure and like how it's so important to diving. And like she even notices like, hey, you're not even like listening to anything I'm saying. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. But he doesn't really care. And as soon as they get to practice, Tomo sees his senpai Yoichi arriving, and then he like blushes with excitement. And at this point, I felt that the show was giving every indication that Tomo was a gay character because he has this girlfriend who later in the episode, you'll see like he says that like he doesn't even know why he's dating her. It's kind of like the kid in Gamers who doesn't even know why he's dating Aguri. It's just like I accepted her confession because it was the easiest thing to do. Like Tomo says, like if I had turned her down, her friends would have probably yelled at me. And like that's basically his reason for why he's going out with her. But whenever he sees his like senpai, he gets blushed and excited and really hot-blooded and really like it's so ridiculous. So there's definitely like a bit of like at least shipping going on there between these two characters. I feel even if it's only for like Fujoshi bait, it's there for sure. So yeah, the boys like practice diving. That's basically the rest of the episode. They chill in a hot tub afterwards to like ease their sore muscles. Mm-hmm. And there's also like some weird anatomy stuff in that like hot tub scene where you're looking at Tomo's like side profile and his collarbones, because he's so skinny, stick out a little bit, but they're drawn like they stick out like 3 inches from his chest. Ew. It just looks really weird. It's kind of just bad anatomy drawing. And so, okay, the deal with that, he belongs to this diving club called the Mizuki Diving Club. And the deal with them is that they're in some sort of like financial trouble because like they have like a sponsor, which is like a sports sports like company or something that spells. I think they sell like sports equipment, and they're just not doing well. But like their big star is Yoichi, and Yoichi's father is the coach of the team and a former Olympic diver. But yeah, basically I'm going to skip a lot. Like towards the end of the episode, you find out that Tomo also has a brother named Hiro. And Hiro is kind of pissed at Tomo because it seems like he likes Tomo's girlfriend Miyu, and he thinks that Tomo should be like paying more attention to her and spending more time with her, but he's not. And he keeps saying like, I would be a better boyfriend for Miyu than you would. So there's some kind of tension there. That's kind
damn son.
Yeah. And then near the end, a new character is introduced, and it's this beautiful woman who her name is Kayoko Asaki, and it turns out that she is going to be a new coach for the team, specifically for all the divers other than Yoichi, I think. And she's saying that their goal is to go to the Olympics, basically. So yeah, and then I didn't really like the first episode because there was a lot of like weird mixed messaging with like relationship plots, and there wasn't a lot of focus on actual diving. I would say episode 2 was a big improvement because once the new female coach got there, she started training the guys like with a strict regimen, and they focused a lot on like what kinds of physical training goes into diving, like dry training, which is like outside of the pool, and like your body alignment, like so you're aligned the right way to go into the water with like the least resistance and the least splash, and like your footwork in moving up to the diving board, like all this stuff that like involves not actually diving that really improves your technique. And they also introduced a new character who is a cliff diver who has only ever dived in the ocean before. He's never dived in a pool. And he's the grandson of like this genius Japanese diving legend or something. And so they get him to join the team as well, basically saying that like, hey, your grandfather came to Tokyo to try to do pool diving after being like the greatest cliff diver ever. You should follow in his footsteps. And so he kind of wants to do that. And yeah, his brother also seems to continue to convince Miyu, his girlfriend, to go out with him instead, which is really awkward. But like, it really seems like Tomo only has eyes for either diving or his senpai Yoichi at this point. So yeah. But I think the second episode was more balanced. It's more actually about diving. So if you care about like diving more so than like just another show about cute boys in a pool, then it might be going in the right direction. But I haven't watched any further than that. So that's about all I have to say about Dive.
Yep, you bored me to death.
Yeah, I can understand that.
All right, I'll take the next one because I really like it. And this is where I start my comparisons with Tsuki Kakegurui. So Kobini Koreshi, which is also called Convenience Store Boyfriends. It's on Crunchyroll. Sources, it's an original, which tend to be better than other stuff. Yeah. Studio Pirate. The director is Hayato Date. Date. Sorry.
It's okay.
It's Japanese, not English. What's silly me? But he has done 2 shows nobody's ever heard of, Naruto and Naruto Shippuden.
Which might be why he has a crazy voice cast for this show. Yeah.
Yeah. And as you said, notable is a ridiculous AAA list voice cast, which is just crazy. Ignore your yawn comment. Frankly, this show is beautiful. I was blown away by the backgrounds. I was totally getting a Garden of Words vibe. Not as good, but a vibe. Like very similar to like, I'm pretty sure they just went out and they just sketched real places for some of these backgrounds, which was amazing. Not much. We didn't really... You hated the opening because it was just like a dude running, but this is when it really grabbed me because... Really?
The opening part? Or grabbed you? Or...
Yeah, because of the backgrounds. And then it also emphasized... it made me wonder why he's running, and it turns out it's because of his athletics thing or something like that. Yeah, then eventually he gets to his destination. There's like a girl there and hands him a drink and it's his girlfriend. But then like the show like takes a step back and then like explains how this all happened and whatnot. But I think the relationships make sense, especially compared to Tsukigakure, like especially with the blonde haired dude. You know, he has a crush on like the school class president, who's kind of like she has the glasses and the two pigtail type things, whatever. But like he just kind of ribs on her, just kind of like teases her and stuff like that, and she hates it. But he does it because he, you know, kind of likes her, and he doesn't really know any way to express his feelings. Even though you're in high school, this still happens. That was so much more real than like Tsukigakure to me.
It just felt weird to me in the second episode when, like, because he had been doing that, like, she goes to her friend and is like, I need to get this guy to stop harassing me. Please help me.
Yeah, but she's warming up to him, and that's just real. That is real to me.
I guess so. Yeah, that could happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that definitely has happened, like, in the past that I can remember. Like, girls who were just like, please get your friend to stop talking to me.
Yeah, but I think it's really cool, the dynamics of like two groups of friends talking what stuff. And I guess there are shots that be considered boring shots of nothing, but it's so beautifully animated and drawn. I really like it, and I totally forgive it, and I think they're great transitions. Unlike Suki Gakure, that looked nowhere near this good, and for the 10th time we had to watch the main character wave sticks around and wiggle his butt. Those are the worst transition scenes ever. I'm just like, I don't care about this.
Yeah, I didn't care about those scenes in Tsukigakure very much either. I could have done without them. I would say that, so parts of Tsukigakure looked really bad, like the CG parts, with like crowds walking around. But I thought for the most part, the show actually looked pretty solid. I'm not as impressed by like the animation in the show as you are, or the backgrounds. A lot of it is like computer generated. I mean, it does look very good at times. Like, I will definitely give you that. Like, especially sometimes when they're outside in those opening scenes when he's running. I don't like his running animation, but I like the backgrounds. I agree. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like I would say that like what I get from the show, it's a little bit uneven. It kind of reminds me of Real Life in terms of style. And yeah, it was like medium impressive to me. It was not, I definitely did not get a Garden of Words vibe from it. Like, not even close. But like, it really interests me that you think it's that. I think it just speaks to like, you really like this style of art and animation a lot. Whereas I think I like slightly different, like slightly more hand-drawn stuff better. But that doesn't mean that this style is bad at all. So yeah, I don't know. I just thought that was interesting.
Okay. Well, and there's also like the scene where they're like, you think they're pushing like a gay relationship. And I'm like, no, they're not.
So, okay, this is what I was basically getting at with that, is that, so the main character has this guy who's just randomly sleeping over his house, and they don't explain why. Like, he's not his brother. Like, he's his friend who's just always sleeping over. And I'm just like,
they don't have to explain it. They talk about, he's like, do you have to tell your parents or something like that? And he's like, no. So obviously he has home issues with his parents. So that's why he's staying there. And he is clearly, this is the guy that's in love with the class president.
Yes, definitely.
So, yeah.
Yeah, they're not pushing an actual gay relationship, but I do think there is like Fujo bait there if Fujoshi are looking for it. That's what I feel. Yeah.
I will say when I was 18 to 20 and I was working at a restaurant, I still lived out in the country, and it was just a 30-minute drive, and I almost lived at a buddy's house most of the time because it was easier for me. It was just a convenience thing, and that was my excuse. I just think his excuse is, issues at home, but I didn't have issues at home. But like, it's not weird to me. Like, I have been in this situation where I was at a buddy's house the whole time. So
okay. Oh, so they play on this in the second episode where there's a scene where they're kind of fighting because like the main character is confronting the blonde kid about like, hey, you've been getting too close to like the class president and all this stuff. They start wrestling back and forth because they kind of just like get on each other's nerves. And then the little brother comes in and he just like gives them a blank stare. And they're like kind of straddling each other because they're mid wrestle on the bed. And then he just like slams the door. He runs down the hallway and he's like, Mom, Haruki's gay. So I thought that was really funny. Like that was like funny. To diffuse the tension for sure. It's not anything like, it's not actually like shipping them or anything. I agree.
But so. I believe you enjoyed episode 2 a lot more than episode 1.
I did. Yeah. It, like parts of it felt like a little bit like forced drama, but I did like them communicating with each other a little bit more. And just like the class president, like talking with her friend and like meeting with like the kid, and then like the two guys talking to each other, and like they have this like, he has this like really heartfelt like moment when he's talking about like, I like all girls, but like this one's special, and he's kind of falling asleep, and then his friend's like, okay, fine, I'll support you then. And so when they go back the next day, instead of like telling him to stop like going after her, he tries to bring them together in a way that works out. And she's basically like, fine, if you just don't yell my name so loud and like, I don't know, and just like stop so looking at me so much. Don't be so touchy-feely. And yeah, and then like she like, there's a really weird part where she goes to like shake, he wants to shake her hand on it because like he's agreeing to like follow her rules, and she like grabs his hand, but her hands are so tiny compared to his that it looks like she's grabbing like a tree trunk. It's really ridiculous. His hands are so big.
I didn't even notice.
It was just a bad proportions shot, but it was kind of funny. But it's cute. She clearly is like blushing and kind of into him, but is very nervous about it. So yeah.
What really convinced me about the relationship was they really got across that she was literally like afraid of him, thought his motives and whatever he was doing was like legitly just to be mean to her, just to tease her, things like that. But then she kind of did a 180 towards the end when she kind of started realizing things, and then she realized, you know, oh, he's most likely doing this because he might potentially like me. And then that's when she warms up to him a little bit. Yeah. And it just seems, I just really like it. I think it's real. It seems so real, but.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's cool.
Yeah. And I can't wait to talk about more of this, hopefully.
Oh, and I want to say, like, there's one part of episode 2 that I thought looked really great. And it was when Mishima, the main character, was swimming in like pool practice. Like the water looked really fantastic around him.
Yeah, because he's a swimmer, right?
Yeah, he is. And then when he's leaving practice, he's like running around a corner, and that also was animated extremely well. It looked really good. So yeah, there's points in these episodes where it actually looks really fantastic. Like, yeah, I can definitely see that. So. Anything else you want to say about that?
No, like the show. But
all right,
we can do Fridays now. And we were still talking about Rage of Bahamut Virgin Soul because it is freaking amazing. And you should already be watching this.
You definitely should not be missing out on this show. It is fantastic.
It is so fantastic. And if you haven't seen, and you're like, well, I've never seen the first season, well, just go watch it.
just seriously go watch it. It's not that long. Just go watch it.
You're going to love it. But anyways, we are reviewing this one still. So episode 14, Homecoming. It opens up. We got citizens, you know, they're still hard at work cleaning up the destruction from the last battle. And, you know, because of all the angels and all that crazy stuff, walls falling down, they're picking up all the debris and whatnot. But then like Charios is like being pampered by like some barber shop shave guy. It's pretty funny. And like his main Black Knight guy is like reporting that they don't know where the prisoners escaped to. And then like the barbershop guy accidentally cuts him a little bit, and like he's scared to death, but like Charios forgives him or whatever. But then he leaves the pursuit of the prisoners to the night guy, and he says he will be going to Abos, which we don't come back to what that is until like right after the credits. But anyways, quick shot. We go back to Kaiser. Who is thrown back into his prison cell because he sacrificed himself for the others to get away the last episode. He does then nap for a bit, and then Diaz visits him. And their conversation, it boils down to the two of them and John will return the Orleans Knights back to their former glory. That's all it is, basically. But on the other side, Nina and John have arrived at Nina's home, and like Nina walks into a home saying she is home and like basically gets mauled by a bunch of little kids. It's pretty cute. Just a bunch of cute stuff really going on here.
Everything about Nina's village is so good looking. I just want to say, as they're like flying into her village,
I want to live there.
Oh my God, it looks so awesome. Like all of the art was fucking mind-blowingly good. And like I love the character designs for like the kids and like the things that they were wearing. Just like, yeah, everything about that shot as they were flying.
I really want to live there. I just have 3 requirements: air conditioning, electricity, and internet.
It would be absolutely perfect after that.
It would be perfect. I would sit out on the deck and play video games with you guys. Probably Destiny 2.
Have a little dragon daughter with your wife. Watch her fly around all day
with my dragon wife. Oh, it'd be great. Yes. Which is also funny because like all the dragon women are like super strong. So, yeah. But what's also funny is they're like still in their prison clothes, which is a gown that's half rag. And then like Nina's mother, she comments with like, so that's what they're wearing in the Capitol nowadays. It's just all these funny little things going on. But then John and Nina go and meet the village elder, who Nina like calls like grandma, and she's just like this super short little old lady that Nina even like picks up. It's so funny.
She's like, don't worry, she's not a statue. You can come closer.
But Nina like asks her if she can take them to the land of the gods, and like as they're waiting for her answer from her, they, like sit down in front of her and just keep like waiting and like she's taking her time to answer. She's like even blowing on her hot tea, and then she like quickly turns to Nina and she's like, you want a sip? And it's just all play for comedy. It is so great. But then rather than answering, she tells like this story about how when the gods and demons first took down Bahamut, the gods were very tired and she ended up carrying them home on her back.
And that was 2,000 years ago. So she's been alive for at least 2,000 years.
Yeah, dragons live forever. Yeah. She looks 2,000 years old.
She really does.
Yeah, and she like also has a portrait on the wall that she looks at, and she's like, look at that, I used to be a looker. Then they both start like begging her to take them, but then they realize she fell asleep as they were. It's just this comedy scene. It's so great.
It's really good. I like it.
And Nina's like, she's impossible to wake once she's fallen asleep, and they should come back tomorrow. And then they go back to the house, and then they're in the hot spring, and John and Nina talk about romance while soaking in the hot springs, and it's all done really well. The most you get is like a bit of cleavage, and that's extremely minimal.
Oh, it's not a fan service scene. Yeah, it's like...
Yeah. It's really good. And like Nina basically says Cherios is her first love without actually saying his name. And she's also not sure if she still likes him since he has done a lot of terrible things. It's pretty cool. You really need to watch it to get all this dialogue. There's a lot, but it's really nice. But she still thinks he is a great guy and or potentially can be a great guy. Mm-hmm. And then like right at the end of their heart to heart, like a bunch of kids cannonball into the hot spring, interrupting them. It's great. The whole time they're in the village, I thought it was going to be boring. No, it's great. But later that night, after everybody's gone to sleep, except Jean and Nina's mother, because Jean gets up and walks in, and her mother's still awake and sits down and talks to her. And they basically start talking about being mothers and raising kids and whatnot. And we find out Nina's father died protecting the village when Bahamut last attacked, which was 10 years ago, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And then the show kind of hints at that Jean may have inadvertently led to the death of Nina's father. And I was thinking, am I reading this right or not? But you feel like, yes, definitely that's what it was doing.
I felt I got that indication too, for sure, that John was about to tell her like to apologize to her, and then the mother just like interrupts her, right, and says like, you must have been so hard for you, and just hugs her basically.
Yeah. So like Jean at the end has an emotional release from like all the crazy shit that's been happening since Bahamut, and ends up crying into Nina's mother's shoulder. It's a really good scene. Really good.
Yeah, she really needed a shoulder to cry on. Like, she's been through a lot of stuff lately.
Yeah, and, yeah. Then it goes to the next scene with Alison, the new not New Orleans, Jesus, the Orleans Knights captain. And he's like puking his guts up after drinking too much because he's trying to cope with being the new captain of the Orleans Knights. And like Cerberus is there, like patting him on the back and looking after him. And like Diaz shows up and like he just he literally throws Alisant over his shoulder and carries him away. And like he tips Cerberus on his way out. It's pretty funny. It's just, there's just like cameos of Cerberus every episode here and there.
Yeah. She hasn't really served a purpose for a while yet, but yeah.
No, she just works a brothel.
Yeah.
We need a demon brothel, dude. Jeez. So Nina and Jean, do meet with the village elder again, and she agrees to take them. She transforms into her dragon form, and it is super cool.
She's gigantic. Yeah.
It's sweet. She's huge. And then like Nina says her goodbyes to everybody, and they're on their way. But then after the ED, the ending, last whatever, we see Cherios. This is crazy. We see Cherios looking at a magical like rock chain thing, asking how long it'll hold. The other man replies with, has already exceeded its limits long ago. But that was it. But we do get new EDs and OPs. I thought the ED was awesome.
Yeah, it was really good.
The OP.
I didn't mind the OP. Yeah.
The ED's music was way better. The visuals were a lot cooler. And that English in the OP was god awful. I agree with you. I've heard worse English.
Okay.
But it was bad. It was hard to listen to.
I didn't think it was that bad, but like I can see where you would think that though.
Yeah.
And it was definitely not as good as the first OP for this show. So yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I just want to say, like, I loved every scene in that episode that involved Jean. Like, whenever she's on camera, I just fucking fall in love with her all over again. Like, there's even little moments, like when they're coming towards Nina's village, and she spots those like little cat-tailed vegetables on the side of the road, and briefly remembers, like, oh, those are the vegetables I used to pick and cook for Muguro when he was growing up in the countryside. Like, just little tiny things like that, like, lend a lot to her character and what she's thinking. And yeah, that just Jean is amazing. Basically, that's all I have to say. So yeah, the next episode 15, is called City of the Gods Part 1. So it's part 1 of 2. So this episode starts out with this council of demons who are meeting in this like blizzardy, barren wasteland where they're basically in hiding from the humans. And on a giant throne in the middle of the council is Lucifer, who's still around. And so he believes that the power that the humans have been wielding over them is going to be too much for them eventually, and will eventually start to wane. So he's basically saying, like, we're just going to wait for the perfect opportunity to strike, because we can't be like the angels in heaven who just got wrecked. We can't let that happen to us. And one of the demon tribe leaders asks, do you know what has become of Azazel? And so that's like a scene transition. And we see that Azazel's punishment in the capital is basically to fight to the death in the arena. So after the OP, we see that Jean and Nina are flying on top of Granny Dragon. And they're like on the carriage, or they're inside the carriage on top of her back. And there's like this huge lightning storm all around them. And so they're just like tumbling all around the carriage, just like losing their shit. And Granny's like, I can't go any farther. The barrier has been strengthened and I can't get through. You're going to have to go on without me. So she picks the carriage up like a baseball and just throws it as hard as she can towards the clouds. Awesome. And like they just like go tumbling around the inside more, and then they eventually come out in the heavens. And it's really funny because like Jean opens the door and is like, hey, I see something. And then like she's like, Nina, where are you? And she's just like face down drooling, like she's just done. So, also in heaven, Sophiel is asking Bacchus to take care of Muguro, who has been super depressed ever since the battle when he wasn't able to save his mother and wasn't able to win, obviously. And Bacchus refuses, like at first. He's like, I'm not going to take care of that kid again. Then she's like, well, I'll reward you with wine. And he's like, really? So he's like all in. He's like, Muguro-chan, come back. And so he's happy now. But, Jean and Nina continue to wander through the land of the gods, which is like this beautiful magical forest where they are. And it's funny because like Nina comes up to this like spider web, and there's this giant majestic looking white spider. And Jean is just like terrified because she's afraid of spiders. And Nina also finds some like huge, like gigantic berries and just starts eating them. And Jean is like really afraid that she's going to get poisoned, but it turns out they're delicious. So they're just like having fun, but they eventually get tracked down by this little cute angel girl who wears glasses. And Nina's first reaction to her is just like, "Oh my God, you're so kawaii." And
I liked it.
Yeah, she was really cute. And basically they're on guard, but Jean basically tells them the whole deal and says like, "Hey, we're here for my son." And they're like, "Well, who's Nina then?" And she's like, "I'm also Elle's mother."
Like,
and then
really?
She's like, "They didn't buy that. Okay, I'm just her friend." And they take them to the inside of the city of the gods. They go through like this huge gate and stuff and into this big city of the gods. And Nina comments that it doesn't look as lively as she expected, and the little angel girl kind of gets upset. And she's like, "I need to show you something." And she brings them to this like big room that has like all of these blue flickering lights like floating around. And they're like, "Oh my God, it's so beautiful. It's so pretty." And she's like, "Yeah, well, each blue light represents like a fallen god from when like Bahamut returned 10 years ago, and even in our most recent battle." And she's like, "Yeah, I hate you humans for like causing all this to happen." So yeah, they're not very welcome here, just like they wouldn't be that welcome with the demons either. But so yeah, in Abos, Cherios like was looking over the weapon that he had fired, and he's got like a bunch of mages who are trying to hold the seal on it, but he knows it's going to break again soon. And he says like, "I'm going to be forced to fire this weapon again." And his like underlings, like, or his scientist or whatever, is like, "You're going to lose more than your left eye this time when you fire it." Mm-hmm. So he's just warning him. So that's like a ticking time bomb, basically. So we go back to Azazel, who's in the arena, and like he basically just instantly defeated the first monster he had to fight. And he's like sitting in a tunnel, wondering why he's even trying to stay alive.
Yeah, he's really powerful though. They have to pit him up against somebody like insanely strong if they're ever even going to defeat him. I mean, he was taking on Charios' army by himself. So.
Exactly. Yeah. So he's just like, this is like nothing for him, but he's still just so depressed because he feels like he's a complete failure. And when he says, "I don't even know why I'm trying to stay alive," they cut directly to Elle, who is looking at the ocarina that Azazel gave him. So it's kind of an indication that maybe the reason Azazel is staying alive is because he cares about Elle. That's one of the only things he still cares about. So a nice connection there. And Elle is refusing Bacchus's demands that he eat something, but suddenly he finally senses that his mother is nearby. But before she goes in, Jean meets Sophiel, and she almost faints at finding out that Elle is okay. But then Gabriel approaches, and Nina makes a funny comment, like when she sees Gabriel floating up, just like, "Oh my God, all these gods are so pretty," which is very true. It's funny.
Yes, yeah. I mean, as angels and gods, yeah, they should be.
I guess so, yeah. So Gabriel explains that Elle no longer trusts the gods or wants to follow them, and Jean promises to talk with him, basically. So Jean enters like the seclusion, like isolation chamber that Elle's being kept in, and they hug and like rejoice. And then Nina and Bacchus like spot each other, and they start like ugly crying and floating towards each other on their heavenly platforms. Only for Bacchus to realize that Nina's not actually aiming for him. She's just aiming for Jean and Elle. So she goes like right by Bacchus and like hugs them instead. And he's like, I'm here too.
Yeah, there's a lot of funny moments in the last two episodes, really.
It's really good, yeah. So Elle explains to his mom like how he survived after she left him or was forced to be separated. Like he had his throat branded by like slave traders, the demon slave traders, but it was Azazel who saved him by like slaughtering like the people who had captured him and releasing him and taking him under his wing, basically. And he tells his mother that like Azazel is a really good person, which I'm sure will come into play later on. Elle asks Jean to release him so he can return to the surface world and bring peace back to like the world, basically. And Sophiel is like, watch your arrogance, because he's basically saying like, I'm the only one who can do this. But L is just, he snaps back at Sophia and says, stop listening to Gabriel because she's going to get you nowhere. I'm the only one who can save this world. And he kind of says it with this kind of maniacal look in his eyes. Like he's letting the power go to his head a little bit too much. And maybe he's not ready. But it's definitely an interesting dynamic. I want to see what he can do going forward. But yeah, as expected, this show continues to be freaking awesome. So yeah.
Yeah, you can't beat that.
I want me to take the next one. I think I wrote all this out. So
yeah, you wrote all this out. It is a good show, though.
Yeah,
I'll do the intro. You can do the rest of it. I don't think there's anything I want to add to the last episode. You did a pretty good job. I'm looking forward to finishing off this series. It's amazing,
for sure.
But anyways, still on Fridays, it's Made in Abyss, Anime Strike. The source is a web manga. Well, that's interesting. And Studio Kinema Citrus. What have they done?
It's like Kinema, like cinema. Yeah, they've done actually a bunch of stuff, but they haven't done a lot of their own shows. So I don't think I wrote anything down.
Okay, them. So we have director Masayuki Kojima, who has done Monster, Piano no Mori, and Black Bullet.
Pretty good resume.
Why don't you take it from there?
All right, so episode 1 is called The City of the Great Pit. So this show takes very little time to show us that it's actually going to be pretty dark in tone, despite the main cast, but mostly consisting of very little kids. Riko is the main girl. She's got blonde hair and pigtails, and her friends are all orphans whose parents have died or disappeared deep into a pit known as the Abyss, which their whole city is built around like a ring. And so in the beginning scenes, it doesn't take long for Riko and her friend Nat, who's a boy, to be attacked by this like sky serpent called the Crimson Splitjaw, while they're out searching for like relics that they can bring back to their orphanage to sell for money, basically. The orphanage sells the relics that the children bring back and to support raising the kids, essentially. And if they mess up, they get punished. And like Riko's like, yeah, last time I got punished, I was like strung up naked, and I was like, oh wow, that's kind of dark. Like this little girl. So Riko and Nat are apprentice cave raiders called Red Whistles, who can only excavate near like the very top part of the abyss. Like you can go down really far into this abyss, and there's more world building to that in the second episode. So Nat is like bleeding from his head, and he's about to be eaten when Riko stumbles across him. And she uses her red whistle to distract the Splitjaw, who then comes after her. And this is like the first moment where I had to really suspend my disbelief, because like the serpent like sends her flying back through the air at a really high speed, and she smacks her head directly into a rock wall. Like she would probably just be dead or have a concussion at the very least. And not only that, then she falls down a pretty long way directly onto her head and shoulder again. Like I'm just like, this girl is like out of commission. There's no way. But she takes absolutely no damage. Like she looks at her arm and she's like, is it broken? Oh no, it's not. And then she like gets up and runs away. I'm like, oh my God, girl. Like this is so stupid. But anyway, I got over it. And she like moves on, and she comes across she gets trapped in like a little canyon, and she's about to be eaten, and then like this big laser gets fired off over her head and drives away the Splitjaw. And she's like, what the hell was that? And she stumbles towards like the direction of where the laser came from. It like chewed through all of these trees on its way to firing. And she sees like a little boy on the ground who's unconscious, and she like goes to like try to resuscitate him, and then realizes his skin is like really rubbery and elastic. So she decides to take him back to the orphanage because she thinks he's some kind of special boy, so wants to figure out more about him. And like her friends and her like sneak him into Riko's room. And so like, yeah, there's this brief scene where we also find out like a little bit more about the people at the orphanage. Like there's an older boy named Leader who wears a purple whistle, and he's more of like a support or like teacher who like teaches like the other kids at the orphanage, and there's also director of the guild orphanage, which is called Belchero Orphanage, and it's like a woman who basically looks like Cruella de Vil from like 101 Dalmatians. She just looks like a super evil woman, which
it's kind of crazy, but she's prettied up a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I also thought the classroom was really interesting. Like everything in this society seems like it's built with verticality in mind. So the kids' desks are all bolted to the wall, like vertically, and then there's ladders as the rows between the desks. So like the kids climb up the ladder and then get into their desk, which is bolted onto the wall. And I thought that was like a really cool but kind of eerie design.
I started to actually think about that a little bit, and it's actually practical for the world they live in, especially since they're all being trained to go into the abyss.
For sure, yeah.
So like it makes sense in that world. Otherwise, if you put it in our world, absolutely not. But in that world, yes. And I think that's just a really cool attention to detail they made.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then so more details in the background. Rico's room clearly used to be some sort of torture chamber or execution chamber.
Awesome.
Because like they're trying to figure out how to get this kid back alive. They realize he's probably like a robot of some kind, and so she's like, the kids like try to pump some electricity into him with like an electric chair that's in the room, and it wakes him up, obviously, because he's like, what the fuck? And then so
as anybody would be.
Yeah, when they tell him he's a robot, he's really confused because he doesn't really know much about his own existence, it seems. Like maybe he was just recently activated and doesn't know where he came from or what he is. Rico calls the robot Reg after a dog that she used to have. And people are like trying to track down Rico because they think that she probably had something to do with the power going out, which they did cause, because when they flipped the switch on the electric chair, it caused the whole orphanage's power to go out. And so Reg uses his like he has an extendable metal hand that he can fire, and he like flings them out the window, and they like run away for a little bit. And so Rico introduces Reg to her home city when they get to like a big like hill where they can look down over everything. And apparently, it was built over this giant abyss, like discovered like 1900 years ago, and no one has ever reached the bottom of the abyss and lived to return. And the relics and creatures are like these really valuable commodities to the society they live in. So the entire economy is kind of based around excavating the pit. And so, Rico kind of seems like hellbent on putting herself in harm's way, no matter what it takes, because she wants to reunite herself with her mother, who is a white whistle, who is like the highest tier of explorers in this world. And she's able to go to much deeper depth than Rico is allowed to go to. So, like just after the first episode, I just want to say like the art is gorgeous in this show. Background art is unbelievably beautiful.
It looks like Ghibli to me almost.
Yeah, it really does. Like the world building is so good too, like it would be in a Ghibli movie, that it really like draws you into the mystery of the world, and you just want to know more about it, and you really badly want them to explore the abyss for sure. And the animation is like really fluid too. The music was also really good, especially the OP and the ED. They gave me a lot of like Shinsekai Yori type feels, where there's like a little bit of an unsettling tone to everything. And I just thought like the central mystery of the show is like really strong. I would just say like I didn't love the character designs. Like the little kids designs, they got like these like wide faces. They kind of look like Kitamari's sketch. And I just felt like there were things that Rico was doing this episode that I had to suspend my disbelief so much. Like she's going off and like mining with a pickaxe, and then like carrying huge stone tablets in her backpack that she would not be able to carry. And then like she's like rappelling down cliffs, like all this stuff that it's like, I would believe this more if it just looked like she was like a athletic teenage girl rather than a little tiny midget. Like it's basically what she looks like. It's just, I don't know, an Oompa Loompa girl, basically. So that was my thoughts on the first episode. But the second episode was actually really interesting. It's called the Resurrection Festival. The episode introduces us to a device called the Star Compass, which is supposed to point to the farthest reaches of the sky. But for some reason, they noticed that it points to the depths of the abyss instead. So that's kind of giving you a hint about the world, maybe. The show goes on to tell us that the people mysteriously suffer worse symptoms the lower they go down the abyss. It's called the Curse of the Abyss. If you go down the full 6 levels, you either lose your humanity or die before you get back up. So yeah, that's not great. Kind of like the bends like you can get if I remember reading about people who were like building the Brooklyn Bridge when they would go under like the water to like build like the foundations for the bridge. They would get like this disease called the bends where it was just like not having enough oxygen basically, and like too much pressure would just like mess you up and you get really sick. But yeah, this is a more fantasy take on that kind of thing. So we also learn more about Reg, the robot boy. So he can run on either electricity or food. So he's part organic, I guess. His skin is smooth to the touch, but can stop a blade, which I guess they tested by trying to cut him up. His hair is inflammable, again, which they probably tested by trying to light him on fire. And his arm can extend up to 40 meters. And
she did everything to him.
Oh, yeah, she definitely did. And then like she tells us like she couldn't really see inside his butthole, but she stuck a measuring stick into his butt and it broke off inside of his butt. And he's just like horrified when he's hearing her talk about this. And she also says, oh yeah, and his penis is more real than mechanical. And I was like, oh my God, Jesus Christ.
And then like the other kids in the show are like, whoa, that's too far.
Yeah, the other guys are like, we're so sorry we couldn't stop her. It was something. They basically conclude that Reg is probably made of different relics from the abyss. So they think he probably came from there. So also they're worried that if anybody finds out about him, that he'll be like dismantled. So they need to figure out a way to keep him here, but without him sending off any warning signals. So they basically just dress him up as if he's a normal boy, and he tricks like the orphanage leader into thinking that he was just from some other town. And so he just joins the orphanage with them.
Yeah, he comes into the front door, which is, interestingly, since I've been watching Stranger Things, was the original plan with the girl. Just to come in through the front door.
Yeah.
But anyways, go on.
So he gets accepted. Then we get there's this montage after that scene of some questionable content because time is passing. And I've been hearing a lot about the show's manga having some weird, dark content. So like we heard about in the first episode, Riko gets punished. So you see her getting her little body getting strung up naked and tortured basically because she has her arms and legs like tied up behind her.
Yeah, and she's actually strung up naked, and I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, that was pretty dark. Apparently it's even worse in the manga. So it seems like it's toned down here from what I've read and seen from manga panels that people have been posting. But yeah, it's still like, did the show really need this like to build its backstory? Like it was already doing so well without that. Even if she just had like a hard life, I would understand. But like the getting strung up naked seems like a fetish thing that I'm not that happy about. But yeah. We learn that Riko has an uncle named Habo, who is also trying to become a white whistle. And currently he's on the second level of the abyss in some place called the Inverted Forest, which sounds really cool. And they jump...
Everything's upside down.
Yeah. They jump 2 months forward in time, and it's almost time for Reg to go on his first cave raid. And he won't have to wear, like, I guess new recruits wear, like, a bell around their neck, like a little cow or something. And so he doesn't have to wear that any longer. But they go to greet Habo, who is returning from his own raid. And there's a huge crowd gathered on the platform near the top of this elevator that goes down into the abyss. And he gets out of the elevator and he's carrying a white whistle. And there's a man in the crowd near Riko who says, "That looks like Liza the Annihilator's whistle." And Reg asks Riko, "Why just a whistle?" And Riko slowly turns to Reg and says, Liza is my mom's name. So basically then they begin Liza's Resurrection Festival. I guess this is a festival that the society has whenever somebody dies.
So this is what I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
This world does everything it can to possibly see everything in a positive light. And this is a perfect example. Instead of mourning the quote possible death of Aiza the Annihilator, they throw a festival instead, and they are celebrating the life she lived rather than mourning the death. I think that's cool.
It is kind of cool. Yeah, that's kind of an idea from, God, what is that Orson Scott Card book? It's the one after Ender's Game, Speaker of the Dead, or Speaker for the Dead. The idea of that book was that like you should celebrate people at their funeral rather than like mourning for them. Yeah. I kind of like that idea a lot.
It's really interesting. It's really cool to think about. I would honestly prefer it at my funeral. All my friends who are still left alive are getting drunk off their ass and telling shitty ass stories about me.
Yeah, just enjoying
I think
themselves.
That would be the best. And I would love to do it for them. Not that I would love they die, but
yeah, it's all very happy. I kind of feel bad for Riko a little bit though, because she's like, she doesn't know how to feel. Like she just sort of thinks she may have lost her mother, and everybody else is so happy. And in that sense, it feels a little bad, but she has.
Yeah, but I think it's like exploring our current point of view, which is where we have funerals when we mourn their deaths, and like she's just caught in between right now. She doesn't know what to think about it.
Yeah, so instead, Riko, like Habo, talks to Riko and he tells her that her mother was carrying a sealed letter on her when they found her, and so he wants her to read it, but it's being examined by some people before it reaches Riko, like some researchers about the Abyss, apparently. So we find out that Liza was Leader's teacher as well when Riko was very little. And so Riko kind of asked him what kind of person she was. And like, yeah, Liza left for her last dive when Riko was still 2 years old. So it's been a long time.
And she was a drunk.
Yeah. Leader he didn't rave with her, but he just says like, she was a heavy drinker. She was quick tempered. She was not always honest and had a really terrible diet. But like, she was still like an impressive, like explorer and an impressive person. And so Leader then asks Riko, hey, how are your eyes doing? And like, apparently she doesn't have bad eyesight, but she gets headaches unless she sees everything through these specially designed crystal lens glasses that she has. And apparently this was caused because Riko was born in the Abyss, because Liza was pregnant with Riko 12 years ago. And they had to go down to the 4th level of the Abyss to try to retrieve a relic called the Unheard Bell. And
not only was she was like pregnant almost the entire time while she was down there also, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Which is kind of a big deal, because she was developing inside her mother's womb like 8 of the 9 months. So
yeah, so the raid group was down there for like 10 months, like you said, and repeatedly getting into fights with other foreign raiders. And then Riko's father, who was a black whistle, who's like the second highest rank of whistle, Torka, died down there. And most importantly, Riko was born like before he died, obviously. And usually ascending from the 4th level would be impossible, even for adults, because of like the curse. But Liza brought some kind of curse-repelling vessel with her that they were able to carry Riko in back towards the surface. And they left the other relic down there, which was a big decision because like that unheard bell is extremely valuable. But they decided to carry Riko instead. And Leader points out like to himself that like, hey, well, actually Liza just went right back down to get the bell right afterwards. But it's still important that she cared enough about Riko to like save her life and bring her back up.
Mm-hmm.
So basically at the end, Riko receives permission to read the sealed document from her mother. And so she goes to like this big cave guild HQ, and inside the document are mostly diagrams of beasts from the Abyss that Riko has never seen before. But one of the diagrams looks exactly like Reg. And there's a short note with the diagrams that says, at the netherworld's bottom, I'll be waiting. So that means that maybe her mother is still alive and will be waiting for her. So clearly it's going to be Riko's mission to find her mother at the bottom of the abyss and probably take Reg with her. And the ED was like extremely cheery. Again, like it's just like same with that juxtaposition of like really dark tone and like really cheery music and stuff. And it looks like there's going to be like a rabbit girl that's going to join their party soon. So that looks cute. But yeah, I could not be more interested in where this series is going to go and just seeing more cool art come out of it.
Yeah. I already said everything I had to say about that. I thought it'd be pretty neat. I definitely look forward to watching more of this. So,
all right.
But let's move on to our next show. We're still on Fridays. Fridays is a big day. There's a lot of shows. But we'll go to 18If, which is on Crunchyroll. The source is a game, which is interesting. Studio Gonzo, director Koji Morimoto. He's done Memories, Robot Carnival, and The Animatrix, which is crazy.
It's pretty cool.
And episode 1, The Witch of Thunder. And before I do this, let me take a big drink of this whiskey because it is batshit and crazy.
This was a really crazy episode of anime. Mm-hmm. I will definitely say that.
Yeah, I think what they were going for was trying to establish how crazy the show could be and then dialing it back for episode 2.
Yes.
So that episode 2 and on isn't so crazy. So anyways, as my first note is, oh shit, I took some acid by accident. Never mind, it was just the OP.
Yep.
That was just the OP. Oh god, man. So we open to a blonde woman with like pigtails walking down something similar to a model runway. She like also has emoticons gravitating around her. She goes into the room and she has an audience of stuffed animals. And she gets excited when she sees she has friends that came to play. She clicks on their emoticons, and then a guy in a chicken suit and a wrestler guy with a talking crotch appears. No, I did not mispronounce this. This is what happened. And I'm just going to let that visual sink in for a moment. Yes, talking crotch. He's like, wah, wah, wah. It's crazy. She calls herself the Witch of Thunder and turns talking crotch guy into a piece of cake and the chicken into a panda. Her reasoning is they had to be more cute. And then she plays a game where she kills some demons with her pigtails. It is bonkers.
It's an interesting opening, I'll give it that.
I hope I didn't lose people because this is a pretty interesting show anyways. But then next scene, boy wakes up in a room and he touches the window to the outside world, and like lights start revealing some like Matrix-esque space with like cogs and nonsense. It is bonkers. It's like Alice in Wonderland. Mm-hmm. Bonkers. Anything can happen. And he says if he is still dreaming, he might as well go back to sleep. But then like he looks at his phone and like finds a glowing app. He clicks it and then appears in the room from earlier that we saw with the stuffed animals as the audience. The witch's head pops up out of his phone and says, "Do you want to play a game?" And I should definitely be high while watching this show. It was crazy. Oh man. But then like she grabs him by the throat and starts choking him, and then this random girl suddenly appears and swipes away her hand from him. Suddenly the room also changes to a different one, and then the girl explains that it was a witch and he needs to go with her. Oh man, this show. And she's also calling him Oni-chan, which is Big Brother, which I think most people watching anime know this already. And then they go through a door, which is on the edge of a cliff in space, and the door disappears behind him. And I know I feel like I'm talking nonsense, but this is legit what happens. And then like a giant serpent comes out of the sky and gobbles him up, and he suddenly awakes again and on the bed he woke up on earlier. And he's like, oh man, I'm glad it was a dream. And then he also notices the glowing app again is now gone from his phone. But he sees the door and he goes through it, and the girl from earlier is on the other side, upside down, waiting on him. He then gets distracted by another door behind him disappearing. And then suddenly a stampede of sheep charges him wearing pink top hats. Have I? All right. And then and then the sheep transform into humanoid cat person that tells him he is wearing weird clothes. I fucking lost it because here by far is not remotely weird compared to anything else that's been happening so far. I need a second to retain my composure because this is insane. This is insanity. There's not enough drugs in the world to explain what is going on right now.
Do you want to move on to the giant stuffed teddy bears?
I guess I will. So as Bcom just said, giant stuffed teddy bears start to surround them. And fortunately for them, a door opens up beneath them and they fall through. And the girl's like saying something as she follows them. The cat can't see the girl, but the guy pulls him through the doorway before they get crushed and whatnot. The cat also tells him, and humanoid cat, I already said that, but that's what it is. Also tells him it's the dream world, and if he dies in it, he dies for real. And then just quick scene of like the pissed off witch of Thunder wondering who is defiling her dream. Then we go back to the cat and the other three people, and they deduce the girl must be Lily. We don't know exactly why he knows who Lily is.
Yeah, he just knows that she has white hair and a white dress, and she's important. Something
special for whatever reason. But we find out who our main character's name is. His name is Haruto Suki Kishiro, and the cat's name is Katsumi Kanzaki. So many Japanese cat puns in there somewhere. So Katsumi is also doing research on the dream worlds, and Haruto wants to leave, but he can only leave through the blue door if he wants to leave, as Katsumi explains to him. But before they make much further, the witch finds him and transports them back to her room with all the weird plush and stuffed animal things talking as our audience. And she's like, oh, you guys aren't cute. So she turns Katsumi's body into a cake and Haruto into a cute bear. And I was just like, haha, cake cat. But then like the witch gets pissed and eats the front half of Katsumi and throws the rest to her stuffed animals that like pounce on him and devour him and rip him to shreds. This is horrifying. And like Haruto isn't scared. So like the witch cuts off his arm to like prove a point. And then this also transforms him back into a human, which is interesting. And then he also, by believing it is a dream, he's able to summon a sword to defend himself. So it's crazy, crazy stuff. And then suddenly Lulu appears again. And he's like, you must kill her. And then she shows the past of the girl. And basically what happens is she was just a cute glasses girl that got confessed to. And when she accepted, it was just a joke played by her classmates. Yeah, horrible bullying. And then she eventually went to sleep, and Lily explains that all the witches in the real world have sleeping beauty syndrome. So if he kills her, she will awaken from her sleep. He exchanges a couple blows with her and gets his head chopped off, but because he says his dream, his head reattaches itself. Woo! So this was interesting because Lily says you have to kill her. He doesn't in the end, I don't believe. Haruto then basically gives the witch a stern talking to, and he says she needs to be more laid back, and the first thing they should do is skip school and do something fun together. And she transforms back into her real form and then wakes up in the real world. He did not kill her.
Yeah.
So then Katsumi wakes up talking about how he dreamed he was eaten. He keeps re-waking in the same world. I'm sorry. Katsumi, sorry, the cat guy. Jesus. He wakes up suddenly next to him. He's like, I was dreamed I was being eaten. And Haruto's like, he doesn't say anything, but we know he was eaten. But then the blue door appears that we've been waiting on, and they make their exit. But then Haruto wakes up again in a strange room, and he's like, whatever, I'm just going to go back to sleep, and like lays back down. This show is bonkers.
Yeah, Jesus. So it seems like the cat guy can leave and go to the real world, but it seems like Haruto is sort of trapped in this reality.
Yeah, he seems to be trapped.
And maybe he's dead. I mean, maybe he's not actually a living person, so we'll see. But
it may be the male version of the Sleeping Beauty syndrome. Who knows?
Could be, yeah.
They haven't talked about it at all. So it's just a mystery for later on. But then we go into episode 2. Time stopped at age 12. And this is where you see the show get dark and really interesting. So Haruto dreams of another witch hunting down some other guy before he wakes up, still in the dream world, that same room. And he's thinking about what he just saw. What he just saw was like a woman, red heels, trench coat, walking down another dude, chasing him down. And like the other dude's like, his bones are getting broken. It's getting crazy. We go to the next scene, who we are at first believe is Katsumi. And he's looking over a sleeping woman, saying he has met someone who might be able to wake you up. He also sees on TV that a victim that has died was related in a very violent crime that happened years ago, where a group of kids broke into a house and murdered the parents and the older sister. The younger sister survived, but is currently afflicted with Sleeping Beauty syndrome. I will go into more detail later about how horrific this murder scene is.
Yeah.
Whew, it is dark. But so anyways, Katsumi meets up with Haruto in the dream world and says his dream was real and what he saw was actually real. And there will still be 2 more murders because there were 3 boys that murdered this family. And the one that was killed in the same way as the mother. So Katsumi gives Haruto a communicator that can contact him in the real world. So that's really interesting. Katsumi meets up with the other 2 boys in the real world. He finds them in a bar drinking, and they're trying to stay awake because they've been having nightmares about this other lady, and they know their other friend also died from the nightmare, apparently, they feel like. And Katsumi warns them not to fall asleep. But also, meanwhile, Haruto has made it into the witch's dream world and contacts Katsumi. He asks the boys to tell him about their nightmares, and they have the same dream every night of the woman in the red high heels, always chasing them. And then one of the boys gets fed up, staying awake, and leaves to catch some sleep anyways. He just doesn't care anymore at this point.
Yeah, they're like trying to take caffeine pills to stay awake, but he's at the point where he's like, I just can't stay awake anymore.
But they're also drinking heavily, which is a dumb
yeah, it's
idea.
Pretty dumb.
Wow. So Haruto then meets the witch in this like apartment room that they're in. And he surprises her by asking if he can watch how her parents were killed. She's just kind of like, whoa. And then like that's like the mid scene of the show where it cuts over. But then back in the real world, the one guy that left has like fallen asleep drunk on the street. And then back to Haruto and the witch, he manifests in the dream world as like this hideous, ugly little creature thing. Can you describe it any better?
It's like almost like a crab lobster thing. It's really
that
weird.
Mated
looking.
With a snail.
Yeah, there's something weird like that. Oh god,
it's just hideous.
It's just like a creature out of your nightmares, basically. And it looks like he's like disgusting, basically.
Oh yeah. But the witch starts telling her story about what they did to her sister while tormenting the small creature in the exact same way. And it's horrifying. She finishes her story and the guy's face like explodes in the real world. Mm-hmm. And then the creature in the dream world turns into the real body afterwards. And Haruto's just like, huh, that's interesting.
Well, he's just like, wow, I didn't know you could do this. I didn't know you could kill somebody in a dream, basically.
Yeah, but this whole time, Katsumi's like, we need to save these guys. But then Haruto does an interesting twist where he's like, no, I'm siding with the witch. I'm going to help her kill these guys, and crushes his communicator so he can't talk to him anymore. Mm-hmm. And I would normally be against this about killing completely in general. But after what I saw these guys did to the family, I understand why Haruto is siding with the witch. Yeah, these are 3 horrible individuals. They broke the bones in every single bone in the father's body. Oh my god, the scenes they showed, it was just, they were like
blood everywhere. Yeah.
Blood everywhere. Gory, but quick gore. Like one of the older sister's eyes is like popping out. Oh my, it's horrifying.
And their goal was just like to shock the world. They just wanted to be like infamous.
Yeah. Like the one guy, that leader, was like, this was a game he made up, and the other two guys went along. He didn't do any of it, but he was there smiling the whole time as they tortured the family.
Exactly.
So the third and final guy appears in the dream world as another ugly creature, but he wanted to actually fight the witch. Like, he's intrigued by this idea. But so, like I say, he just went to sleep intentionally. And he begins by having the same dream as running away. But when he starts talking to her, he manifests in his human body back into the apartment where the other two are. And then, like, after some talking, he tries to use the same power as the witch and actually starts to hang her from the air like she's being choked. But then, like, Haruto's like, nah, fuck this, and like jabs his fingers into the dude's eyes and gathers them out.
Yeah, man, it's pretty visceral.
And then, like, Haruto, like, crushes his head under his foot, and then the dude dies in the real world. It's brutal. So the dream is ended, and Haruto and the witch appear in like a sunny world by the river. It's really nice. And the witch is like, hey, she has a new dream, and she wants to like kind of meet Haruto in the real world. And she ends up walking through the blue doors and wakes up in the real world. That's when she sits up in the bed and has this one line where she says, once I'm out of bed, I want to meet you. And like from the first episode, we also saw the other girl wake up, and I had the sense like they will meet. So I feel like they might eventually find him, like his harem of girls, basically.
Yeah. Like, not that they're like supposed to be a harem, but like, yeah, I feel like the people that he's helping out now may eventually get together and figure out how to help him, because clearly he's going to need help at some point. But yeah.
For whatever reason, he's trapped in the dream world, it seems so. So Haruto then returns to his room where Lily is waiting for him once he went through the blue door. It should have taken him out, which is how the blue door is explained. But it keeps returning him to this room, this dream room. And Lily's there, and they just do a quick talk. It's nothing really important addressed. And then Haruto goes to sleep because he's worn out. And then just a quick final scene of like Katsumi standing over his sleeping sister, who we find's name is Urina, and wondering what kind of dream she is having.
So it's pretty clear that she's going to be one of these witches, and that's probably why Katsumi's so interested.
Or Lily herself.
Or, yeah, Lily maybe as well, too, yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm a pretty big fan of this show. Like, I love how the artists and animators are, like, letting their minds just go crazy. Like, it just looks so different and so much more inventive than a lot of stuff.
I feel like they're having a lot of fun with this.
For sure, yeah. And it's really gory, like you said, but I also feel it's not gore just for the sake of it. It's not just, like, for shock value. It's, like, it serves the story and it makes things feel more visceral and unsettling. Yeah,
like it when it portrayed those guys as these ugly little creatures because of what they did in the real world.
Yeah.
Is like legit. And like even when they gut them, like it's just really quick. And I'm just like, oh, that's cool.
It's like psychological gore. It's like Satoshi Kon movie gore where it serves a purpose and it's to get under your skin a little bit. Yeah. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
I liked the idea of just the professor being in the outside world and being able to communicate with Haruto in the dream world, because it reminded me of a little bit of like Inception, where somebody's on like a higher level of consciousness than you are, but can still communicate with you. It's kind of cool being trapped inside dreams.
Yeah. Were you possibly going to skip this if I hadn't recommended it to you?
I had forgot to watch it. So I didn't watch it until like just a couple days before we were recording this. And yeah, it's like easily one of my favorite shows of the season now. Like, so I'm very glad that I watched it. Yeah. And I hadn't heard many other people talking about it. That's the thing. And
I've heard nobody talking about it.
A lot of people, I think, were turned off because they just turned it on for a couple minutes or like just didn't give it a chance because they were like, what the hell is this? And I'll admit I do that with some shows, but for whatever reason, this show just caught my attention right off the bat and I stuck with it. So yeah.
Okay.
Unlike the next show.
Oh God, this is gonna be quick.
So yeah, the next couple shows will be a little quick. Also on Fridays, Vatican Kiseki Chosakan, which is on Anime Strike. The English title is Vatican Miracle Examiner. The source is a novel. The studio is JC Staff, and the director is Yoshitomo Yonetani, who has directed Food Wars, Better Man, and some other stuff.
And then he does this? What?
Yeah, this is a very different show from Food Wars.
Random.
This is basically a Vatican detective show. Like, the two main characters are basically detectives who are at the Vatican who, like, are sent out to inspect miracles or claims of miracles around the world. And so their first mission takes them to this church where a woman has apparently had an immaculate conception, but clearly not all is as it seems. There's like some demon ritual summoning and other weird shit going on. And I just like basically thought the show was okay. It kind of felt like CSI Vatican City or something. And yeah, I watched the second episode and it was a lot of like random religious mumbo jumbo getting thrown around, and murders and miracles keep happening, and the show can't seem to focus on any plot thread long enough for me to like pay attention. Like at the end of the first episode, there was like this miracle, quote unquote, where the Virgin Mary, her eye, like a statue Virgin Mary's eyes were pouring down waterfalls, and then at the beginning, crying basically, but it looked like a solid stream. And then they come to the conclusion in the second episode, oh, well, it must have been condensation. And I was like, really, guys? Like
that wasn't condensation.
That's not condensation. And there's like some just random weird stuff happens, like some weird like blonde like student at this like church school like has like stigmata and is like bleeding from his hands and like being given a message direct from God. Like I just get the feeling,
he like floating in the first episode.
Yeah, he was like floating in this episode too. I think
sweet scene, and then they just didn't talk about it at all after that.
Yeah, it was super weird. There's a lot of weird like stuff going on behind the scenes, but I couldn't find myself getting into it because the two main characters aren't that bad. Like they're your typical like detective characters, but every other character I'm just not interested in, and I'm just really not interested in like the church premise. If I was like more religious or had been raised more religious, I might find the show more entertaining. So maybe like give it a try if that is where your background is, but it's not mine. So yeah, I'm just not impressed by this show basically.
I found it boring. So
all right, I'll move on to the next one, Shokoku no Altair, which is on an Anime Strike show, and the English title is Altair, A Record of Battles. And this one is sourced from a manga. The studio is Mappa, who have been on a roll lately. And the director is Kazuhiro Furuhashi, who is a pretty big-time director. He's directed Mobile Suit Gundam Unicorn, Rurouni Kenshin, Trust and Betrayal, which is one of my favorite things of all time. It's pretty amazing. But yeah, more than anything, this felt like Arslan Senki, if you have seen that show, like the heroic legend of Arslan. It's about a young princely boy who has an eagle as a messenger bird. I mean, like, come on. Or I think it might be a hawk. He calls it Iskander in this show. The boy's name is Tugril Mamut. And he is known as the Golden Eagle and has recently become a pasha, which is some sort of like military general or something in the Turkian army. And he's a prodigy because he passed his exams at like age 12, military exams. In the first episode, we meet this girl, this beautiful woman named Shara, who's like a dark-skinned, like I think she's Arabian, but I'm not positive about that. And then in the second episode, they say that she's able to speak Araba, which is their like faux version of Arabian or Arab. And so she's like a dancer, and he watches her dance, and like she pulls him into dancing with him. He goes back to his like estate at the end of the night and finds that like she's in his bed, and he's young still, so he's just like, I'll go sleep on the roof and you can sleep here, because she like basically guilt trips him into allowing her to stay the night. The next morning, Mama like catches a thief. His bird Iskender does most of the fighting though. Like basically whenever Mama wants to like attack someone, he like whips around this like device that makes noise. I don't know what it's called, but I've seen this in movies before. And it like screams out, like makes a sound that like screams out to his bird, which comes and then will like attack whoever he throws the thing at. So that's how he's able to like defend himself and catch thieves and stuff like that. So basically, with the word building, we learn that this nation of Turkey is on bad terms with this Baltrine Empire that they've been at war with recently. And yeah, the empire's prime minister, Franz, was just discovered murdered. He was shot with arrows that bore the Turkian crest. So the empire is demanding that the Turkey send one of their generals to the imperial capital within a week, or else they would view this assassination as a formal declaration of war. So at the council meeting, there's like a bunch of pasha who are sitting around arguing different viewpoints and what they should do. One is like this purple-haired man named Zaganos, or Poison, who pushes them to just let war come. And the Imperials are determined to have war. So like, let's just give it to them. An older man named Halil, who's sort of like a mentor to Touken Bahamut, like says like he doesn't want to repeat the mistakes of 12 years ago when they lost so many people in the war. And Touken tries to propose like a third option, but Zaganos like shuts him down, saying like, you're too young, we don't care what you have to say. But basically, over the rest of the episode, Touken works with Halil, and he's able to basically prove that the arrows that shot the prime minister were not the arrows that the Turkian army uses. They were arrows instead that use like the feather and like the same craft that the Empire uses. So clearly it was a setup, basically. Yeah. So Touken like goes and catches up with Halil, because Halil was going to sacrifice himself as the general to the Imperials to stop the war. But Touken catches up. He goes and speaks with like the Imperial Emperor at their capital, and he like shows him the evidence, and like the Emperor like looks at the evidence for like 10 seconds and then leaves, because he realizes that like one of his ministers has been screwing with him. And that evil imperial minister is named Virgilio Louis. Or Luis, I don't know. And yeah, he's clearly been scheming. He's trying to get into power. And that's basically it. It's very like straightforward, like political machinations in the background, and like just sort of like medieval era, like battles and knights and stuff like that. So yeah, it reminds me a ton of Arslan Senki, which I liked.
I've never watched it.
Yeah, it's a decent show. I think this Mappa show is actually better animated than Arslan Senki, which is nice. And also the Turkish-inspired like clothing and designs are definitely pretty cool. You don't see that very often in anime. It is kind of awkward that the boy leader of this like Turkish army is a white blonde-haired kid. Like he couldn't have been like Turkish looking or like that. I don't know. Typical anime. But yeah, and then the second episode is more about just like more political intrigue, and Touken saving some other man who made a stupid like political mistake, and just like all this like stuff. But in the end of that episode, Touken kind of gets in trouble. But yeah, not much really happens. It's just like more background for like how the Empire is scheming against the Turkian people or whatever. And yeah, I felt this show was very average. Like if you're really into like this time period or like this design, or just like a military like strategy show or a little bit of like a spycraft show, then this might be for you. But it's not really catching my attention that much.
It's definitely not for me.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on from that to something that is definitely for Leo. On Saturdays, we have
screw this show.
Leo's number one pick of the season, Recreators, Anime Strike.
Oh, let me take episode 13, please.
Fine. I'll just say Source's original studio is Troika, as you know, and the director is A. Aoki, again from Noah Zero and Fate Zero. Leo, you take episode 13, the recap episode.
Yeah. So this episode is stupidly titled "An Unpredictable Story That No One Knows Where It's Leading To." Yes, exactly. No one knows what the fuck this show's doing. It's a recap episode. It was kind of adorable.
I loved it.
With Meteora doing the narrating and like making herself look awesome and stuff for the first half. Mm-hmm. But really the whole thing is a recap episode and a character introduction. That's it.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it's a recap episode.
How'd you write so much about this
because
episode?
It's fucking awesome recap episode.
Crap.
So, okay, when it gets to the point where Meteora introduces herself, she's like, also, I'm Meteora Osterreich. And she's wearing like super sexy clothing that she doesn't wear in the show, obviously. And she's giving herself all these compliments and she pretends that she defeated Altair and the world now celebrates Meteora's Day in honor of her. And then that's not it. It keeps going. It keeps going after that. Oh, she jokes that this would be a good ending in her opinion, but it doesn't really fit all the foreshadowing. It seems like, you know, it's that she'll tell the real story now. She introduces Rui Kanoya and then in Japanese just calls him a lolicon, which I thought was interesting. In the Amazon translation, it just says like he likes girls, and it's like no. They called him a lolicon. He likes young girls. Like, so I didn't like the Amazon translation of that. She also doesn't like Yuya at all. Clearly, since this is from her point of view. Like when she introduces him, she just calls him like grasshopper glasses and like basically like barely talks about him because she doesn't like his attitude. And then it's funny when she's explaining Silesia's fight against Mamika from early in the series. She's like, please don't make fun of Silesia, even though she struggled fighting against a little girl. Please understand, she's actually more powerful than this. It's really funny. And then, right before Alisteria hits Meteora in like the recent fight before this, like Meteora breaks the fourth wall and tells the audience, muscle brains can't hold a conversation, because she calls Alisteria muscle brains, and she's just making fun of everybody mercilessly.
I skipped through all this. I couldn't take it.
It was fantastic. So Meteora praises herself for being able to resist the provocation in her encounter with Magane. And then there's back to another scene with super sexy fake Meteora playing pool with billiard balls that have the protagonists' faces on them. And I
need to make a trophy for you for doing the longest review of a recap episode.
I everywhere I looked on the internet, everyone loved this recap episode. Everybody. Well,
I'm glad they love something about this show.
It's so much better than your typical recap. And you're getting to the best parts. So like, there's a cute moment where Mamika's ball, the billiard ball, falls into the corner pocket because she did. Also back to, what was I going to say? So Meteora tells us who Altair's character is and then says, I want you to listen to a song by Shimakaze, the girl who created Altair. And World Etude starts playing, and it's Meteora like singing the lyrics like very out of tune, bad karaoke. And luckily she hits the pause and she's like, okay, just kidding. And then so she tells us Altair's character was designed just to make the anime staff's jobs more difficult. And she's speaking on behalf of like the staff, and she wishes Altair would just change into a tracksuit and sandals instead. And so in the end, Meteora tells us this recap episode was planned as part of the broadcast right from the beginning, so not to worry about the future of the show. She says the director and producer would end up shriveled mummies before the second half even started if they didn't take this little intermission. And then she asks us to enjoy the rest of the show starting next week and not tell anyone about all the weird stuff she said. That was an amazing recap episode.
I don't give a shit. I just want to do the titles for the next episodes, but you can do everything else.
Okay, episode 14.
I feel painful and so useless that I want to cry, but it's fun nevertheless.
God, these titles.
Fuck these titles.
They're so dumb.
Quickly do this episode so we can move on.
Okay, so the project to save the world is going to be called the Elimination Chamber Project. So the government gathers together all of the anime, manga, game, and other media companies involved with the current creations that have come to the world to create the spin-off stories that will culminate in this final event where it'll all come together and they can all like rewrite the stories so the characters can defeat Altair. Our issues start to arise when the creators start quibbling with each other over like what lead into the story should be.
Wait, issues with the show? They just arise now?
Issues arise between these people
in
the show.
I was like, what? Issues arise a long time ago.
It basically just comes down to a lot of dick measuring, to be honest, between a couple of the writers. Because they're like, I'm a better writer. I know what's best. And they're like, they just can't agree. Marine also gets upset because there's a female artist who draws like Blitz Talkers art, who is like much faster and like much cleaner, like artist than she is.
Because let's ignore the world-ending shit going on around us.
Oh, so you're gonna love this part. So Sota goes out to have a conversation with Marine and try to like reassure her, and Marine basically has this conversation for the benefit of Sota, because she says, "Yeah, I know I'm not as good of an artist as her, but I can still go on doing it because it's really fun for me." And so I just find drawing to be really fun. So even though I'm nowhere near as good as her, I'm not going to be jealous because it's fun. And then Sota's response is like, "Oh, fun." It's like he's thinking back about like what he did to Shimazaki and thinking like, "Oh, right, I could have drawn for fun instead of ruining that girl's life and sending her to suicide."
You mean ending her life?
Yeah, exactly.
Holy fuck. Yeah, that's...
It was not so great.
I hate this show.
So after a while, the other writer, Yatoji, who works on Blitztalker's story, takes Matsubara's like story idea. He had previously crumpled it up into a ball and thrown it on the floor because he didn't like it, but he like carefully uncrumples it, puts it back on the table, adds like one small twist to it, which we don't even hear, and says like, "Oh, I think this can gain more acceptance from the audience if we do it this way." And they kind of all come together and they start working on it. So yeah, now it's time for Sota to tell us how he's actually going to have a role in this series. So he has an idea.
It only took 14 episodes. Fuck.
Guess what? We don't get to find out what the idea is. We just...
Oh God, so let's make it 15 episodes.
Matsubara tells him, "This idea is horrible." But apparently involves creating a new character. And he's like, "Yeah, if you bring this character into the story, it might be able to work, but I don't know if I can trust you because you're like a rookie. Like you don't know what you're doing." But he likes the idea enough, and so does Blitztalker's like manga artist. That
wouldn't it be definitely more suitable to make one of the existing characters have a specific skill set?
Yes.
That perfectly goes against what's her stupid name's name? Military girl.
Well, the problem with Altair is that she is constantly getting more powers. So how do you block everything that she has? Like, you know, I don't know. So like,
how does that help making a new character?
I don't know. I guess we'll find out. I'm sure it's going to be stupid. Also, at the end of the episode, we get a pink-haired, teary-eyed Moe girl added as the newest character.
I'm done.
I'm done. I needed to tell you about this character, though. So read episode 15.
Okay, so I made a mistake. I was at work. I wanted to see what you wrote. I read what you wrote for episode 15 and was laughing at work and got lots of weird looks. I'm going to laugh again.
It's so good.
But I'll start us off.
All right.
Episode 15. This is perfect. She couldn't have been any more perfect. And I will laugh hysterically into this mic this whole time while you do this.
So the new character that they introduced, her name is Hoshikawa Hikayu. She's got pink hair. She's very moe. She's a character from a dating sim game, which started off as like an eroge, and they're like,
"Oh my God,
don't say that in front of her." And she's just like weeping in front of them. She's so embarrassed because
holy shit,
she realizes that everyone in this world knows like the secrets of her intimate like sex life from the game.
Oh my God, why is this in the show? This doesn't make sense.
And then they start wondering like, what is her special ability? And one of the writers suggests like, well, I mean, it's showing her panties to guys and seducing them. And she just like starts crying even harder.
Where did this come from? This is out of nowhere.
I kind of love it, but it's so ridiculous.
They're just trying to put everything in this show, and it's not working. It's a fucking mess.
So, another new creation shows up after this in another scene and meets with Blitztalker. His name is Sho Harada, and he is actually the good guy from Yuya's manga or game, whatever he's from. I think it's a game.
Yeah, though Yuya seems like a good guy.
Yeah, he's actually like the main antagonist in that game, and Sho is the good guy. And he has a stand, which, you know, Magane hasn't taken away from him, like with Yuya, or Astra Double, I guess it's called Bayard. And yeah, he joins Blitz's side because he's like, if you guys are enemies of Yuya, then you're allies to me. So, and he says that like in the material or whatever, like Yuya like killed one of his friends and his sister. So like he really has a score to settle with him. And there was a scene before this where I guess Alice Tyria's manga author is still alive, and her light novel.
She
author.
let him go like so many episodes ago,
and he's reading Blitz's manga to find out more about him. And then we see that Blitz is thinking about the story of his manga. Basically, in Blitz's manga, like his daughter was a very little girl, was taken from him and used as some part of like Final Fantasy VII Genova like machine to power like an evil experiment or something. And so he had to go with like his friend and like shoot his own daughter and kill her. So he's pretty angry for like obvious reasons.
Does it explain why he had to kill his own daughter?
Not really. You can just kind of infer it was like a Final Fantasy VII type thing. Okay, next scene. You would love this scene. Magane is hanging out in a luxury apartment wearing nothing but panties and a towel to cover her breasts. And she's like dancing around the room, and she's talking about how like she was taking a bath in a tub full of cash, but it just wasn't as fun as she thought it would be. And she's like, maybe it's only fun if you do it in front of poor people. She's so nice. So Alice Tyria shows up to her apartment to ask her for help. And she tells her there's someone who has Magane's same powers, but no constraints. I guess she's talking about Meteora. She then asks Magane, like, what would you do to make the world more fun for yourself? And she basically just asks Magane to like go spread chaos. Alice Tyria, for some reason, thinks that's a good idea. It was very strange.
Dude, okay, I just want to say, Alice here is not dumb enough. She's not a dumb individual. How does she not realize how evil Magane is here?
I don't know.
Really?
It's really pretty dumb at this point. Like, you would think she would have caught on in that last battle with Meteora. Like, that Meteora was not a bad person. But Alice just seems to be very stubborn for whatever reason. So, Meteor, or maybe she's trying to play Magane, because that scene was very strange. Like,
was it?
It was very like awkward scene. I didn't really understand what Alice's intent was there, but except to make Magane go do something. Also, so Magane is dancing all over this room, and her towel is doing some fucking miraculous physics to cover her boobs. Like, seriously, that is the towel of the year. Like, round of applause for that towel. That's incredible work.
On this whole show, you're amazed by the towel, by defying logical reasoning. Wow, really?
Yeah, pretty much. I'll get through the end of this. Meteora was able to get Matsubara to write a spell into her spin-off story with Silesia's story that allows them to survey their audience and tell how accepting they will be of a certain new idea or plot point. So that's just like a way for them to measure how well they're doing in the coming episodes, which is kind of stupid.
Oh, God.
So nothing else really happens until this guy named Onishi shows up. He is the creator of the dating sim girl and her story, and he demands to meet her. He's like this little weaselly guy, and when she introduces herself, he like throws himself at her and asks her to marry him.
Fuck this show.
People have to like pull him off of her, and Silesia's like, be more considerate. You're like his parent, or her parent, sorry. And in response, he says he's in heaven filled with all of his waifus, and he just tries to kiss Silesia, and then she like kicks him in the face. But like, he holds her foot against his face and like rubs it. He's just like that, like ridiculously pervy.
Oh my God. Like, any other time I'd maybe find this funny, but in this show, pick a genre, pick a direction. You can't do everything. Maybe you can, but you're not doing it.
So the government woman like yells at him and like, this is not a meeting for like fanboying. This is a meeting for figuring out how to give Hoshikawa more powers. And they're like, so how do we give this dating sim girl powers that'll be useful? And he's like, oh, it's simple. I'll make a fan disc. And they don't even explain what that means, but I assume that means like it'll be something that'll turn into like a magical girl or something in the eyes of the fans.
Oh God.
So in the end, there's this really weird conversation between Blitz and Altair. He tells her that he thinks that she's weak because she's written as a character who helps the weak but never actually saves anyone and doesn't actually want to, but that actually makes her strong. It was a very weird conversation. But anyway, it makes him want to protect her and basically like his daughter. So basically, that's what that is saying. Like Altair, he sees as like his daughter. So that's why he's on her side, essentially.
Yeah. So I have a question. In the episode 14, we were going to find out what Sota's point in the story was. In episode 15, you have yet to tell me what the point of him being in here is.
Nope. They don't cover that in this episode. He is just working on his new character and story at this moment, and he will unveil it at the right time so he can become the hero of the show.
But they just showed a new character. I thought that would have been his thing.
Nope. That comes later. That'll be like the Deus Ex Machina of this show. Yeah, I'm definitely falling out of love with this show. Like, I just want to say, like, it continues to just like wallow in exposition and adding new characters and never gets around to actually doing anything cool with these characters ever. There's just more talking, more scheming, and then more talking, and then more new characters are introduced. Like, sure, Hoshikawa is funny. She's a funny addition to have like this dating sim gal game character in there. Like, I got a good laugh out of that, but like, I don't see how it actually helps us get towards like an enjoyable, satisfying end of this show. I feel
like the show should be serious most of the time.
Yeah, I agree too.
So when they do goofy stuff and things that don't make sense, it really takes away from it for me.
It does. Yeah.
Which is why I hate Sota so fucking much.
Yeah, and I really just can't stand Sota. Like, his character is very irredeemable in my eyes, and they basically just have not addressed that at all. So, yeah. Let's move on to the next show.
Okay. You have all the next shows.
Hooray. Well, I'll talk about this next one.
I can comment a little bit about
Ballroom.
The one you're going to start now because I read the manga, and I can talk a little bit about Ballroom, but it's not good. But go ahead.
All right, so Kakegurui is a Netflix show, unfortunately. The English meaning of the name is like compulsive gambler. The source of the manga, and this is also by Studio Mappa, and the director is Yuichiro Hayashi from Garo the Animation. He also did. So this one was pretty interesting. It's like centered around a transfer student named Jabami, who is this girl, very pretty girl, who is entering a new school that has a tradition of gambling after class, basically.
She's very bodacious.
She is. And there's a boy in school named Suzui who is told to guide her around since he's the class rep. And he basically explains to her, like, there's a bunch of rich kids at this academy who gamble with, like, infinite money from their families or their family businesses or whatever. And, like, Suzui himself, he's not a very good gambler, and he is in massive debt to a girl named Saotome. Saotome is a girl who's jealous that the new girl is getting a lot of attention, so she challenges her to a match of what's called voting rock, paper, and scissors. Basically, her classmates vote either rock, paper, or scissors, and the two gamblers need to try to determine which cards they should throw out based on reading their opponent and the limited information from the cards they've received. Like, so the classmates like write down like the rock, paper, or scissors symbol on a card, and then they like put it like in a box and they draw the cards basically as they're going, and they have to decide like, I don't know, like I think they draw like a few cards at a time and they have to decide which card to use. It's kind of complicated. It makes more sense when you watch it. Jabami keeps going back and forth between betting 2 chips and then 500,000 yen worth of chips, which is kind of throwing Saotome off. She eventually loses, though. She loses all of her chips back to Saotome, but it turns out she was mostly just gathering information while she was losing to her. So she starts playing mind games with Saotome and challenges her to one last game where she says, like, I'll throw down 10 million yen of real money as my bet. And Jabami has figured out that Saotome is winning because she has a lot of the class working for her. 21 people, to be exact, are being told by somebody who's giving signals what cards to vote for.
I want to say in the manga, they portray this really well.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
It's pretty cool in this first episode.
Especially when they do the reveal. I don't know how the anime did it, but I thought it was great.
Yeah, the reveal is pretty good because based on this, Jabami is able to mess with Saotome and win the match because by throwing an unexpected scissors basically down to beat Saotome's paper, because Saotomi had worked out that like scissors would be the least likely card for Jabami to have, and Jabami knew that that's what the lines she was thinking on, so she used that to her advantage. Jabami later explains all of this to Suzui, and she knows that someone must have been using, must have been signaling. So she used like a little hand mirror in the middle of the game to look behind her. And she saw that it was actually Suzui who was giving the signals because he is in debt to Saotomi, so he owed her.
He's a giant pussy.
Yeah, also that.
Pussy.
And Suzui says he's going to leave the school because he's not strong enough to keep up with people like her. He's just like blown away. But then Jabami slides like a big wad of cash in his hand and tells him to stick around. And yeah, so like it reminded me a lot of like Prison School, like after the first episode, in terms of like fan service and art design, like especially the ED. Like if you watch the ED for this show, it is pretty hilarious because it's basically 3 shots. It's so the ED is basically Jabami walking towards the camera, and she has her like blouse like low cut, and she has her arms out up, and like she's just like walking like towards the camera really sexily, and the camera cuts between 3 different shots. That wide shot, then it cuts into her panties, just upskirt, and then it cuts to her cleavage, and then it cuts back to the wide shot, and then it cuts back to her panties, back to the cleavage, back to the wide shot, back to the cleavage, back to the panties, back to the wide shot.
I'll say the manga is not really fan servicey at the most.
Well, this was.
I honestly can't even talk about cleavage. I think they emphasize large boobs.
Yeah,
and maybe when people sweat from like the stakes that are set.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's not really big at all on the fan service. So that was really interesting. When I was reading your notes, I was like, oh, why is it so big on the fan service?
That's interesting.
On like Prison School, even in the manga, yeah, it's heavily on the fan service.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, and then episode 2 is more of the same, but with like a different opponent, basically. So Jabami is challenging the student council president to a gambling match, this time with card memory. So the student council president has like 2 decks of cards that her parents' company manufactures. She lays them all out on a table face down. And the idea is like you need to match as more pairs of identical cards than the other person before they can. Like, so you need to match like 52 pairs of cards or whatever before the other person can, or 53, I guess. I don't know. So this takes like a lot of memorization, of course, of where cards are. You have to remember what you've picked up and where the matching card is and stuff. So the student council president wins the first match. And again, Jabami was collecting information, and she manipulates her into playing again, basically. She kind of guilt trips her. It turns out Jabami was paying extremely close attention, because what the girl's trick was with her cards, she has a heater in her bag, her school bag. And there's like a heat sensitive mark on...
As we all do.
Oh, yeah. Heat sensitive mark on many of the cards. So for like the first 2 minutes of the game, or like 1 minute even, you can see the mark on these cards and know which cards they are. So Jabami was able to figure out that this was the case somehow, which is kind of like a superhuman ability. And in the second game, she not only turns over all of those cards that are marked, but she turns over all 52 pairs of cards in a row, which that doesn't make any sense. Like, she wouldn't have been able to tell what the other unmarked cards were. So that's really stretching reality there. But whatever, she does it and like totally crushes this girl, and then like gets in her head and makes her cry and just embarrasses her in front of all of their classmates, like with this evil face.
Get used to it. It's the whole fucking show.
Yeah, it's a lot of like embarrassment, sweaty faces and stuff. Yeah. And yeah, in the end, it turns out that like the student council president only held that position because her family gave a lot of money to these other influential students at the school. And they had
student council and president.
Yeah. What? The girl she challenged was the student council president.
No,
Yes.
she's just the class president.
Oh, sorry. She's the class president. You're right. So there's a student council also who have allowed this girl to be the class president.
Yeah, they're a huge deal, which is where we're at right now in the manga. I actually just read the latest chapter today, so.
Oh, cool. So yeah, she was just a small fry basically who got there by paying money. And so we see the group of elite student council students wondering how they should play around with this new student Jabami, basically. That's the end of the second episode. So this is a really intriguing show. Unfortunately, it's on Netflix. So it's not airing week to week. The only way to
Damn you, Netflix.
The only way to watch it is with subs, and the only people subbing it seem to be random, like, anonymous people from 4chan, and I don't really care to watch a show that way, so I don't think I'm gonna consider covering this week to week because it's just not really officially coming out. Little Witch Academia was kind of like that, except there was a really good subbing group doing it who actually really cared, and I trusted them. And that Little Witch Academia was also a very special show. So
yeah, and we knew it was going to be good in the first place, so that's kind of the big deal.
Let's move on to the next show. Action Heroine Cheer Fruits.
Which sounds terrible by its title.
It is a weird title.
But it is an original.
It is,
so,
yeah.
Sell me on this.
Okay, it's streaming on.
If you want to.
First of all streaming on High Dive, which is a new streaming service from Sentai Filmworks, which is just like another streaming service that we don't need. But it actually has some kind of cool features. I'm kind of annoyed at how good some of the features are. Like, you can watch streams with another person in chat from this website, which is kind of cool, like simultaneous streams. Anyway, the studio is Dio Media. The director, Keizo Kusakawa, who directed Leo's favorite show, Fuka. He also directed Kantai Collection, Kankoi, and like Maho Shoujo Lyrical Nanaha A's.
Oh shit, let's just skip this whole thing.
Yeah. So this first episode was surprisingly really fun. The basic premise is that around Japan, different towns and cities have their own idols who they look up to. This is nothing new in anime. This is a lot of other shows have done this. However, the main character, Mikan Kisei, has a little sister, and she really looks up to this heroine, like Super Sentai type heroine named Kami Dio. And she's always watching their show, and she finds out there's a live show coming to their town. And they go to see the show, and it turns out the show was canceled. And her little sister is like inconsolably upset. She's crying. And just to stop her from crying, Mikan like blurts out that I'll do something about this, and we'll see the show next weekend. So Mikan's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. We can't actually see the show. But she realizes she has a really good friend named An, who is also very, very into Kami Dio and is also incredibly athletic. So An agrees to help Mikan put on their very own Kami Dio show, complete with like costumes, music, and choreographed fighting. And it was really cute. Like, so they practice really hard, and like they invite like the little sister and stuff, and like they put on like a show for her and her friends, and it was fun to watch as the kids started out like laughing at them like it was ridiculous, but then they were really won over by the incredible like fight choreography and the athleticism from An, because she's like really crazily athletic, and she can make it look like she's a superhero from this show. Yeah, my only issue was like there was like a couple fan service scenes, like but they were really not that bad. It just felt out of sync with the rest of the show was kind of going for, which was more cute. And that kind of continued on into episode 2. There were a couple more fan service scenes, but also in episode 2 we got introduced to the student council president, Misaki, who her reason for wanting to do this Kami Dio, she approaches these girls because she sees them doing the show in the last episode, and her grandfather had built this theater in the town before he died, and wanted to bring life back to the town with it. And the theater has been struggling and hasn't had like a show or anything that has been popular, so it's going to get demolished basically. So in the beginning of the second episode, Misaki's like talking to her aunt about how like if she wants to save this like her grandfather's performance hall, like she needs to fill it up somehow. And so she basically has 6 months to keep the building from being demolished. And so her idea is to like get these girls and some other girls together and make their own like town heroine show. And so we also meet her best friend, Roko, who is on the tennis team with her. And she's like kind of like, I don't know. I think she kind of has a crush on Misaki. She's like Misaki's the captain of the tennis team, and Roko is like the ace of the tennis team. And Roko kind of feels bad because at one point, like Misaki like lost a major tennis tournament and that she won, and Misaki lost it in this kind of hilarious way. Like she was in like a final set against another player, and like she goes up for like a lob, and like she goes to hit the ball, and like she like flinches, and then she runs to the sideline. It's like, my bra came unhooked in the middle of the shot. And then like on the deciding point of the match, a like bug flies into her face and like just knocks her over, and that's how she loses the tennis match. And so
a bug knocked her over.
It was like a really big bug. It just like hit her straight in the middle of the forehead and like surprised her basically. So anyway, Roko feels bad that like she from that moment on, she decides like, I want to help Misaki in any way I can because she's such a good person. Like she's had such bad luck. So Roko throughout this episode is trying to figure out a way that she can help Misaki with the Kamidayo plan. So she goes home. Roko is kind of interesting. Her father is like an attendant at the train station, and she lives in a decommissioned train on the tracks. And in her bedroom, she has like all these like toy trains, and she decides to like study up on like Kamidayo just in case Misaki asks her for help. And it's weird because she kind of talks to her train sets. She imagines that her train sets are like animatronic, fully talking things that talk to her in like really weird ways. And they tell her like, you need to help your friend, you should help your friend, all this stuff. Like it's just really weird, but also really cute at the same time. Also, so 2 other girls join the group. There's these girls I wasn't as impressed by. They're very generically named. One is named Midori Kawa, Midori meaning green, and she has green hair. And the other girl is named Aoyama, Ao meaning blue, and she has blue hair. So very generic names.
Bow, chicka, bow, wow.
Yeah,
I like blue.
Midori Kawa, she owns a temple, and she lets everybody practice there basically, and she's going to build the costume. She's the costume designer. And the other girl, Aoyama, she actually is in a wheelchair, but she's also really skilled with like music production, sound production stuff, and she knows a lot about lighting stages and stuff. So she wants to be a production person basically. So yeah, they have like this whole group. And Roko's feeling really left out. She really wants to help, so she goes to like spy on them at the temple where they're working. And Misaki is noticing that the main character from the first episode, Mikan, is taking a lot of damage to her body. This is in like one of the kind of fan servicey scenes. They're like fitting each other for clothes, so they take their shirts off, and like she sees that Mikan has like bandages all over herself.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you're into bandages?
Then whatever, go on. I'm keeping myself amused because I'm bored out of my goddamn mind.
Yeah, I mean, well, you didn't watch the show. That's why you're bored.
Yes.
But yeah, so she decides like, Mikan, if you're really having too much trouble with this part, maybe there's somebody who usually comes to my aid all the time, like maybe some ponytailed girl from the tennis club. And obviously Roko hears that and knows that Misaki is like talking about her, and it's like, so she jumps up and like she joins them and becomes like the villain character. And they put on their first big show at the end of the episode, and it's really cute. And there's one of my favorite things about this show is like in the audience they always show like these little girls who are looking up to these heroines, and I think it's like something that doesn't happen often enough in anime, in like girl idol shows, is like younger girls looking up to like their idols, because typically idol shows are just aimed at guys like a lot. I mean, there are girls who watch idol shows too, but like there's a lot of fan service often, and there's a lot of like cutesy stuff that is aimed at men. And so
and right, it's also portrayed that like men are the main viewers also.
Yes, exactly. So
I get that.
This one is more for girls, and I like that. It's different, it's interesting. So yeah, I would just say like this is a fun, cute show. I kind of enjoyed watching it. I think you might want to check it out if you like idol stuff.
Nope.
Okay, next show, The Reflection on Crunchyroll.
That aired 3 weeks after everything.
Yeah, it took forever for this to air. The source is original. The studio is Studio Dean. The director is Hiroshi Nagahama, who directed cool stuff like Detroit Metal City and both seasons of like Mushishi. And also notable is that this is like an original creation of Stan Lee, like the American comic book writer and creator. The Reflection. I don't have much to say about this. This was one of the ugliest looking quote unquote anime I've ever seen. Everything about it looks rough and unfinished in like a first draft. They're trying to go for a live action American comic book style, but it does not work at all. It just looks terrible. The animation is horrific.
Really?
I could only last like a couple minutes beyond the OP, and I turned it off because like I couldn't watch it. It was that bad.
Yeah, I saw lots of bad stuff about it, but I was just like, I'll watch it myself. But then like somebody who I respect's opinion, was just like, holy crap. I was like, ooh, do I even want to try?
Yeah, I was like watching it and I was like, man, I should finish this episode just to say I finished it, but I couldn't. Like, it was so bad. It just didn't even feel like anime. It doesn't even feel like it fits in with the rest of these shows that we're watching at all. So let's move on to the next thing. Did you watch this one, Fate Apocrypha?
No, I didn't want to get involved in something that's has a big following.
Yeah.
So I skipped it entirely. But even you couldn't get into it, apparently.
Yeah, so this is another Netflix show as well. The source is a light novel. The studio is A1 Pictures, so not UFO Table, who have been doing the other Fate shows recently. And the director is Yoshiyuki Asai, who directed Charlotte, which is freaking terrible. Notable is a very strong voice cast. Maya Sakamoto plays Ruler. Miyuki Sawashiro, who is my favorite, she plays Saber of Red. And Saori Hayami plays Archer, the Red Archer, I think, among other good voice actors who are also involved. So yeah, it's on Netflix. It's being subbed by a very reliable subbing group called Unlimited Translation Works, UTW, who have like subbed basically every Fate thing ever. So you can basically rely on them almost probably to be better than the Netflix translation, honestly. Episode 1 introduced so many characters at once. It was ridiculous. The way that this Fate setup is different from other Fate shows is that this time there are 2 teams of 7 masters and servants. So it's like 14 on each side or whatever. It's ridiculous amount of characters to introduce. And then there's another, instead of the church judging the Grail War this time, because the church has proven themselves to be like incredibly unreliable and biased. So instead, what happens is there is a ruler class servant who will judge the battle, and she like shows up at the end of the episode basically. I don't have much else to say about this except that I'm watching it and I'm just like, yeah, this is another Fate show. But like none of the characters like pull me in like the characters from Fate Unlimited Blade Works. Like Rin Tosako, say what you want about her, but she's like incredibly hot and like pretty cool. And I really liked Saber from that show as well, especially from reading the Fate route of the visual novel. You learn more about her in that route, which has only really been adapted by Studio Dean, who didn't do the greatest job of animating that show. In this one, it's just like more of the same type of archetype of characters. Like the biggest thing that I see that people like about this is there's a female Frankenstein's monster who talks in grunts, like, but is also like really kawaii and cute. Like she's people's like favorite character. Oh, actually, she's like half of people's favorite character. or let's say like a third, let's say like 40% like her, then like 40% like this lowly girl who is actually a guy.
Well, let's be honest. Female Frankenstein, that means she's made of different parts of female characters. So we can put anybody can put any female characteristic they want on if they have a specific hand type, a fucking specific armpit type, which is apparently a thing, a tits, an ass, a hips. I mean, come on. Hairstyle. It's a create your own a girl. So yeah, it makes sense why it's popular.
The other thing that kind of threw me off about this show, and I guess it's present in other Fate canon, is there's just like a whole bunch of gender confusion stuff going on. Because like I said, there's like a lowly girl who actually is a guy. There's King Arthur. One of the servants is King Arthur's descendant, who is a boy, but in the show is a girl. But tells her master not to ever call her a girl because he's actually a boy. It's really fucking confusing. I don't understand why they're even doing it. But yeah, so everybody's like, every Reddit thread is just like, oh my god, the traps. And I'm just like, shut the fuck up. This is so stupid.
Traps. Fuck traps.
I honestly don't have anything else to say about it. Like, there was a fight in the second episode. Oh, I do have one more thing important to say about it. The A1 Pictures just animation of this, nowhere near the level of UFO Table. It just doesn't look anywhere near as good. It's really subpar. It's not even on the level of something like Sword Art Online, which A1 did. It's below that. So if you're looking for like a really awesome animated fight show, you're not going to get it. So I just can't recommend this to anybody, really, unless like you're a diehard Fate fan.
We got 2 more shows. How about you?
Okay.
On to the next one, which I didn't watch either.
Katsugeki, Touken, Ranbu.
I have good taste.
Yeah. So this is on Anime Strike and Crunchyroll, I think. The source is a card game, so that's not great. So this is the show that UFO Table chose to do this season instead of doing the Fate show, basically. The director is Toshiyuki Shirai. He's a first-time director, but he's worked on many UFO Table projects like Fate Zero, Fate Stay Night, God Eater, Tales of Sirius, all that stuff, as like an animation director or key animator. So the setup for this show is fairly straightforward. In episode 1, it centers on 2 sword boys. You may remember there was a previous Touken Ranbu show that was just complete Fujoshi bait. And the card game and like I think it's like a phone game too are also very much directed at a female demographic. So all of the main characters of the show are pretty boys. They're pretty boys who are the embodiment of different famous Japanese swords, basically. Basically, the 2 main characters are sent back from the future from the year 2205 to the year 1863 to fight the time retrograde army, who are historical revisionists who are sending like zombie homunculus people back to try to kill important famous people from the time, influential people, to change the future somehow. So yeah, these boys are trying to stop that from happening, basically. It's UFO Table, so the animation and background art are both very high quality. It looks quite good. If you're just in it for the looks, I think you could stick around and be kind of happy with it. I didn't feel like the first episode did a very good job of making me attached to any of the characters, though. Kunihiko is your typical like naive idealist who just wants to save everyone. He's like the younger boy of the 2 main sword boys. And he doesn't care if there's any butterfly effect for the future. He just wants to save everybody. Kane, on the other hand, is a grizzled veteran who is trying to keep Kunihiko in line, and he doesn't really care about anything but the mission. So I assume you're just going to stick around for the show, either for the cool animation or if you're just going to ship sword boys together romantically. Either way, I'm not so interested on sticking around. There was also like this little fox familiar that they had named like Konosuke, and I'm just not a big fan of familiars in shows. I would also note that a poster by the name of Callie Rion on Reddit made a really good observation about this first episode, about how the show just broke its own rules like immediately. Kane originally says that like their side is limited to sending 2 sword boys at the same time, while the enemy can send many. But later in the first episode, Saniwa, who is like their leader, summons like several more sword boys. They have like 6 of them there. So they immediately just break their own rules. Like that was not a great sign. And yeah, in the second episode, like I could barely pay attention to this. It becomes increasingly clear that this is a Fujoshi targeted show because you have a bunch of seme and uke style characters. If you don't know what those are, you can just look them up. But basically like small feminine boys and large muscular boys that you can pair together. There's one boy in particular named Yagen who literally just looks like a girl. Like, besides having a deep voice and short hair, like there's one shot in the episode where he wears like short shorts and has long feminine legs. And it's just like, yeah, this is just not, this is not working for me. Any of this design. Also, I'm not who this is for. So otherwise, none of the characters did anything interesting in episode 2. So I felt it was honestly a wasted episode. And that's about it. So
I'm sad to hear that. That sounds really unsettling.
It's not like unsettling. It's just kind of disappointing that UFO. I just wish UFO Table would at some point work on a story that's actually good. Like they've done it a couple of times, but like this is not a good story. It just sucks. They're such good animators, but oh well. All right.
So are we at our final episode, final show now? Sorry,
we are.
Yes, it's a horror story.
It is. Horrific anatomy, like just horrifying.
And I completely relatable to a certain scary stories. But start us off and I'll scream every time you say something is scary.
So this show is called Ballroom a Yokusho. That wasn't scary, Leo.
No, but you made me think about what this show does. But go ahead.
So this is airing on Anime Strike. It's called Welcome to the Ballroom in English. The source is a manga, and the studio is Production IG.
And Welcome to the Ballroom is exactly how you would start a scary story. You're standing around a campfire with a bunch of your buddies, and you're like, all right, guys, are you ready? I call this story Welcome to the Ballroom. I mean, okay, just start. Go ahead.
The director,
before I ruin this entire show for everybody,
it's fine, is Yoshimi Itazu, who has mostly worked as a key animator until now on things like Paprika, Paranoia Agent, Wolf's Rain, and Die Buster. So he has a freaking resume behind him, but not much as a director. So yeah, this show is about ballroom dancing. The character designs for this show are from the same character designer who did Haikyuu.
Never watched it.
Very, very popular volleyball show. They do not translate as well to ballroom dancing, because ballroom dancing needs to be fluidly animated, and these people have really weird anatomy in this show when they're dancing.
People don't have 16-inch necks. Holy shit.
They have like giraffe necks. Especially in episode 2, there's like a dance competition where sometimes like to make the shot work, like people's arms just grow to like 7 feet long.
Or eyes 6 inches apart.
Yeah.
That are the size of softballs. Holy I'm waiting for somebody to just turn over to the next person next to him and bite into their face. It is so fucking horrifying to me. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do it here now. There's a series called Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. This is regular scary stories, and they're okay. But the thing is, it's the illustration in this book is insane. It's oh Jesus. Oh, okay. So, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. It's written by Alvin Schwartz, which is okay. But what is truly terrifying is drawings by Stephen Gamel. And I feel like he helped on this anime. I mean, these people's faces are terrifying. I took a pic of let me see her name, Tamaki Subaru, and paired it to the the illustration on the front of the book of this book. And if you stripped away her skin, she's the same as the skeleton. It is terrifying. Oh my god.
I'll try to remember to put links to the pictures in the description for this video because it is ridiculous.
Yeah, and then the other picture of the screenshot, like where she's like has his hands on his shoulders and she's looking at him with her mouth open. I'm waiting for her to bite into his face.
See, I don't see it with that shot. I think she looks fine and cute in that shot.
I feel like she's going to bite right into the cheekbone, that little fleshy area just between the eye and the cheek on the side of the face, just chunk it out. Just, oh, Jesus. It tore me from this show every 45 seconds. I was just like, ugh! I was like, something crazy, and I haven't even seen episode 2 yet, so I don't even know if I can take it.
In general, I will say that the character designs in this show definitely seem more suited for a horror anime. Like, for sure.
Oh, God. If this was a horror anime, I would just be throwing praise at it for this design. Because you feel unsettled the whole freaking time.
Yeah, I'll just give a rundown of the basic setup of the characters. The main character name is Tatara. He's like a short, black-haired kid, like typical bright-eyed kid. And he gets into ballroom dancing basically because he just stumbles into it and wants to dance with really cute girls, one of whom is Kyoko. And she, I would say, if you've watched Haikyuu, she looks a lot like the team manager with black hair, the really cute team manager.
Given his situation, I would probably do the same thing he did.
Yeah, she's gorgeous, and he clearly just wants to get closer to her.
I hate dancing.
She, like, the character designs definitely work in her favor. She is incredibly beautiful in this show. Like, I would say she is easily the main reason I would continue watching the show is her
Until
character.
Episode 2.
I still like an episode 2.
Shit.
And then also there's like an older dancer at this dance school who has like blonde spiky hair and who is kind of going to mentor Tatara. But basically that's the main setup. So basically Tatara, we find out in episode 2 a little bit more about him. He is able to basically look at somebody dancing a routine and then just replicate it. He just has like a talent. He can't learn from instructions. Like people try to like instruct him and tell him what to do. But as soon as he sees like Kyoko's dance partner, who's a guy named Kiyoharu, who's a really top of the end like competition dancer in the same age bracket as Tatara, once he watches his routine and follows him, he's able to like just pick it up like nothing. So he has a lot of potential because of that, basically. And he's a little jealous of Kiyoharu because he gets to dance with Kyoko. But at the end of the episode 2, he like realizes that, no, this guy's like, he earned it. He's like a special dancer. I am going to have to earn my place if I want to dance with her, basically. And like there's a dance competition coming up. And I think it's going to be in episode 3, basically, where he wants to watch Kiyoharu again. And he wants to like try his best to get better and better and better. But yeah, during that dance competition, there was some horrific shots of people's faces. Like there's one shot of Kiyoharu when he's like mid dance and like it's just his eyes and his like pupils are slightly off center and he just literally looks like a horror anime character. Like he looks like he's a zombie who's about to come eat your face. It is really bad. And I was watching this with a couple people and we were all like, what the hell is that? Oh my God. It was pretty crazy. So the character design and character animation are not doing a whole lot of good for this anime so far. Otherwise, it's pretty well animated. Like just everything else, like the background art is really nice. Like it's got that production IG like quality and sheen to it. But yeah, man, I don't know. I don't know if I could stick with this one if it keeps us up at night.
Yeah, it'd be pretty. I'm glad somebody else saw the crazy designs because it tore me away from the show. I could not pay attention to any of the storylines or anything like that. But
Yeah, and the last thing I would say about this show is that, like, coming off of watching Yuri on Ice, the thing about watching, like, the skating routines in Yuri on Ice, and is that, like, my reaction to those was always like, oh, that's so cool. Like, that looks so real and it looks so good. My reaction to the dance routines in this show was like, ugh, what the fuck is that?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So
like,
it's interesting. Like, I really noticed it in episode 1, but it took till episode 2 before it really bothered you.
Yes, it did. And rewatching episode 1 again, I saw more of what you were talking about. But episode 2 is what really was like, okay, yeah.
Their necks are like raptors dancing from Jurassic Park. It's fucking crazy.
People were posting all over Twitter just various screenshots from episode 2, like horrified. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
It is bad. But that's all the shows that we're going to be reviewing. So now we're going to move on to our vote. And we were really happy with our voting system from the spring. It went really well. We were very happy. Well, kind of happy. We both had one show we hated.
Yeah.
That was besides that. But we're going to keep watching 10 shows together throughout the summer season. 6 of those shows are ones we're going to come to a consensus on right now that we both want to watch. Then we each get 2 shows that are our locks. That even if the other person didn't want to watch, they're now forced to watch. I think we'll be okay this time around.
I hope so.
We'll try to use these picks for good and not evil, maybe. Last season, we both kind of hated one of the other locks, but anyways, we'll move on beyond that. Again, we'll be covering short anime twice, once at mid-season and one again in the season finale, because they're shorts and it's not really worth watching, and you're better watching in chunks. Also,
some of my favorite anime this season are shorts for sure.
Yeah, the shorts this season are amazing. Mm-hmm. But also by mid-season, we'll have a better idea which shorts are actually worth watching. Let's hope there are some better shorts this season than in spring, because spring is terrible. Yeah, really terrible.
Yeah.
Also, there's a possibility we'll make mid-season cuts on certain shows, depending on something turns out spoiled and something else actually is way better than what we thought. But also, some shows we're not covering just to get them out of the way. You got this?
Yeah, I'll just say, like, so Owari Monogatari second season, it's airing as like a special anyway. It's not really like a full-length anime. And also, like, if you like them, you would know if you like the Monogatari series, like, and you can go to other people for that and find places to talk about it. I'm sure there'll be in-depth essays all over the internet when that comes out. So,
oh boy.
Sayuki Reload Blast is something that we're just not caught up with prior seasons of it, so I felt no need to watch it. And also the same with Senki Zeshu Symphogear AXZ, which is just, it's more Symphogear, and I'm sure it's great. I just haven't watched the previous seasons and I'm not caught up, but I hear they're really fun. So, all right, Leo, what are your top 10 picks for summer?
All right, let's do our individual picks. We both went ahead and decided to put Rage of Bahamut Virgin Soul as our number ones because it definitely deserves a pass, and we could do that without hurting any of the other listings.
Yep,
correct?
Yep. And it would have been my number one anyway, honestly. So, yeah.
Yeah, kind of here, but even so. Mm-hmm. So we'll move on to my number 2, which is Princess Principal.
And that was also my number 2. So
yours.
High five. I just think that show is so promising. Like, the writing is so good in it, and I'm not used to writing that clever in an anime usually.
Even with the lolly girls, I don't feel like they're lolly heavy.
No, yeah, there was not a ton of fan service, and it's not the main point of the show. The main point of the show is the actual story, for sure.
Exactly, which is awesome. But my number 3, which I am adoring, is Restaurant to Another World.
It's a good show.
Oh, it's so good.
I like it a lot, too. It's such a relaxing show.
Oh, yeah. I can sit down and I know I'm going to be starving by the end of it every single time.
I guess I'll say my number 3 was Made in Abyss, which, like I said, we covered it this episode. It just has such great world building. And I just can't wait to see where that goes, even if it is going to be dark. So, yeah.
Yeah. My number 4 is Gamers, which completely blindsided me. I already said earlier, I expected it to be bad. I told you that front up. I was like, this is going to be bad. And then I watched it and I was like, this show is amazing.
And of course, my number 4 is also Gamers. It's just like, it clearly is like very much aimed at me, but it also hits at a level that most gaming shows never do in anime. So yeah.
Right. So number 5 for me is Convenience Store Boyfriends, because I think it's very legit and it's actually real to actual life and how even it works, how most relationships work and whatnot. So that's my big take on it. And I really, because Bcom forced me to watch Tsukigakure, I can't do anything but compare it and just destroy Tsukigakure in the process. But that's my number 5 pick.
I hope you'll get tired of that and just talk more about Convenience Store Boys on its own merits over the course of the season if we recover it. But
it's a perfect comparison to you because I want you to rebuke the things I said.
Okay, that's true. Okay. I'll say my number 5 is 18 If. That show is batshit crazy and the art is nuts and I friggin' love it so far. I love it. It's just so weird and I like weird things that actually work. And this, I think, does. So
I'll agree because my number 6 is 18F and all the same reason you like it. It's all over the place. I think it did a great job with the first episode with being just as batshit crazy as it can be, but then reeling everything afterwards, just so that you understand what's doing.
Totally agree.
So, yeah, that's my number 6. What's your number 6?
Restaurant to Another World, which was your 3, and yeah, that show is so comfy.
I'm surprised you put this so late.
I just wanted to make sure like 18 If and Made in Abyss got high grades because I really wanted to talk about those without having to like lock them in. But yeah, Restaurant to Another World, I like it. I get so hungry.
Because you expected me to rate those so high?
No, I expect you to rate like Made in Abyss like slightly lower, and I wanted to balance that out. But also I legitimately think all those other 5 shows are better than Restaurant to Another World so far.
I see. I didn't want to make my rankings based off yours at all. I made them basically off my personal interest.
I basically did that in the end too. Like Restaurant to the Other World, the conclusion I came to is that like it may not be so interesting to talk about from episode to episode, but goddamn do I love watching it, and goddamn do I love talking about delicious food. So,
and that's why it's my number 3 because it's goddamn amazing, just like you said.
It's so good looking. Oh my god. What was your number 7?
My number 7 is Made in Abyss.
Nice.
It didn't really make my number 6 because I found the other things interesting. Made in Abyss is completely different. It's something I didn't really know anything about. There's a couple other things in my earlier episodes I didn't know anything about, but this one is really just out there. It's completely new. I like what I've seen, but I'm not sure where it's going to go with this.
Okay.
So I'm very cautious about it. But what was your number 7?
A Centaur's Life. I just loved the juxtaposition of like this dark, like totalitarian, like government that like teaches these like little like centaur and like angel and cat and goat kids and stuff like how to live together like equally. It's just such a weird thing to have this dark background for this cute show, cute monster girl like Yuri shipping show.
No, I agree with you.
What was your number 8?
I agree with you because my number 8 was A Centaur's Life.
Yes.
It's just really interesting. I really love the second episode where they had they went to the school that's underwater with the mermaid people, and like as the mermaid people was just as fascinated as them with the land creatures were still just as fascinated with the sea creatures. So I thought that was amazing.
That's cool.
That was really cool.
It was kind of weird how like the mermaid's legs, like it was they weren't the legs had like a thigh gap on the mermaid instead of just like
they had a gap between
so weird.
the the top of the thigh where the crotch would be and down by the knees.
Yeah. And then it looked like their skin was kind of like tearing apart, like where it came together. It was a little weird. That's all I'm going to say.
It was weird. Yeah. If you try to make it realistic, it probably wouldn't work.
Yeah.
But where are you working on? Episode?
My number 8.
Pick 8?
Action Heroine Cheer Fruits. I really liked that show. Maybe I didn't talk about enough about it today, but I just thought it was like really cute in a way that was not insidious, and you don't see that a lot. Like typically shows about like younger girls right now are about older guys wanting to have sex with them, and like this is not that at all. It is a fun show, like, and it does a lot of like tokusatsu, like Super Sentai like homages that are kind of fun, and I just generally like the cast of characters. They all stand out in their own way. So
oh wow.
How about you, number 9?
Number 9, I'm going to go with Sakura Quest. I'm still enjoying the crap out of this show. I think it's amazing. I think everybody should keep watching it if you're still watching it. But what's your 9?
My 9 is Classroom of the Elite. I didn't like the second episode of this show as much as the first. We only reviewed the first in our first podcast.
Yeah, the second episode got very fan servicey.
Yeah,
and predictable.
Yeah, I think this show is kind of predictable, but I do still like just cynical main characters. Like a lot of people have been comparing this show to Ore Gairu, which I don't think is a very fair comparison. That's a much better show. But the main character is kind of cynical, like 8-Man from that show, or Kyon from Haruhi Suzumiya or something like that. And I just like getting inside the head of those types of people. And he clearly has a little bit of mystery to him that has not been revealed yet.
Okay.
Yeah. What about you for number 10?
So as you guys can tell, our lists are very similar. I'll just let the listeners know that we have no idea what each other's lists are until literally moments before we started this show.
Yep.
Before we tallied everything. So my number 10 is Classroom of the Elite. I just said the things I basically wanted to say about it. It's, to me, I think it's kind of smart, but super predictable. Mm-hmm. I felt like I predicted everything, so I can't really enjoy it. But I still think it's better than most things.
Yeah, so definitely.
Got my number 10. So obviously, if you guys are following a trend, Bcom, what's your number 10?
Sakura Quest. Yeah, it's still better than most everything airing. Like I remember saying after the last season, like I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep watching it, and then the first 2 episodes of this season were okay. They weren't fantastic, but it's still such a solid show. I still like it more than almost everything else that's airing. So that brings us to a top 6 consensus. Once we did the calculations, the top one show, the number 1 show we're watching, Rage of Bahamut, Virgin Soul.
Obviously.
Number 2, Princess Principal, since it was both our second rated show. Number 3 is Gamers with a combined rank of 4.
Which surprised both of us.
Yeah. Restaurant to Another World is 4th with a combined rank of 4.5. Made in Abyss is 5th with an average rank of 5.0.
Which is interesting because that is my 7th pick, so it's out of the top 6.
Yeah, so I pulled that one up with a 3.
You pulled that one because it was your number 3.
Yeah, and I did not plan that, Leo. Like, I know it made it sound like I countered your pick, but no, I made my list before you sent me your list, so yeah.
Correct. We both made lists before we saw each other, so...
Yeah. And then, number 6 is 18 If with an average ranking of 5.5. So that's our top 6. So we move on to locks. Each of us has a chance to lock in 2 shows. And I think you said you went first last season, so I would go first this time.
And I'll go ahead and just tell you, we're going to watch the 3-piece and Hajimita no Gal.
Oh, yeah, that's I'm locking those 2 in, right? Like, they're clearly...
no
favorite show.
Yes, I went first last time, so now it's your turn to go first.
With my first pick, I will take A Centaur's Life and get that in there because I know we both like that show and want to talk about it.
Yes.
How about you?
Yes. I will go with Convenience Store Boyfriends because I don't think you appreciate how good this is as a drama show. And been on record, obviously, saying I don't care for drama shows. I think this one's very accurate. And you don't think it is, but I think that's from personal experiences. So this will be fun.
I would say I'm happier with this pick than I was with Armed Girls Machiavelliness. Like already, I like this show
that was
way
just
more.
Fun.
Oh god, it was torture. So for my second pick, I went back and forth for this. There's a couple shows that are right on the bubble. Like Welcome to the Ballroom's kind of on the bubble. Love and Lies was even on the bubble. But I decided to go with Action Heroine Sheerfruits. I just really like that show. I think it's really cute, like I said. And I will make Leo watch it.
Yeah, you're going to make me watch the show. But also, my second pick will be Sakura Quest because it is a good show.
It is a good show.
Bottom line, I mean, there's no way around that. It's just a good show. Let's finish it out.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm glad that we got Sakura Quest in there because that means we'll finish the whole thing. Yeah, which is good.
It's our first show that will finish 2 seasons other than Rage at Bahamut.
Yes.
Which is an obvious choice, I feel like.
Yep.
But Sakura Quest is it definitely gets way better the farther you go in the show. So.
All right. Well, that's it. That's our list of 10.
Okay, you got anything else you would like to add, Bcom?
Just that if you're disappointed that we missed any of those shows, too bad. They all sucked.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe to us on YouTube to get updates on new podcasts or videos. And follow us on Twitter at Nerdom and Other for updates as well. I'll see everybody later.
Peace.